On today's episode of Homeworthy, we're touring 4 homes where creativity transforms temporary spaces into ones you won't forget. First, we visit a West Village 1-bedroom railroad-style apartment where a young couple has crafted a colorful, treasure-filled home, blending harmonious hues, clever DIY solutions, and a perfect balance of casual living and elegant entertaining. Next, we head to the Upper East Side to explore a serene, cozy 1-bedroom apartment, transformed with renter-friendly DIY projects and budget-conscious decor that offers a peaceful escape from the New York City hustle. Then, just outside of Washington, D.C., we step inside a vibrant townhouse where a creative director has turned a 1990s builder-grade space into a warm, eclectic, and deeply personal retreat, layering rich textiles, art, and family heirlooms throughout. And finally, we travel to London, where we see a thoughtfully layered townhouse where an interior designer has used her architectural training to transform the space with antiques, bespoke pieces, and a curated collection, making every corner feel intentional, welcoming, and effortlessly lived in. Enjoy!
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Sarah. Welcome to my apartment in the West Village. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, I'm Sarah Crawford. I do marketing for Decor and content creation on the side, and we are here in New York City in my West Village apartment. When my boyfriend Aiden and I decided to move in together, we started looking for apartments before our leases were up, just to get a sense of what we both liked, make some pros and cons lists, and see where we wanted to move. In the process of just touring random apartments, I set up street easy notifications for the exact parameters of what we wanted: location, all the amenities, price, and the date when we needed to move in. And while I was doing that, one apartment happened to pop up a few months early, and that is this apartment. We ended up touring it the next day. It was perfect, great location, great little details, and we put a deposit down like 2 hours later. And now we're currently here. Hello. Okay, welcome to the bedroom. This is one of my favorite rooms in our apartment. These lovely sliding doors really divide it and turn our apartment from a studio into a 1-bedroom. They're so charming and they're quite loud, but we love them. They're very cute. So as you enter our bedroom here, one of our favorite elements is the double closets, which is a huge thing when you're moving in with your boyfriend and you have a shopping addiction like me. So in my closet here, they're pretty deep, which is really great. I love to keep it color coordinated since, as I said, it's a small space, so you have to keep it organized. And yeah, it has some great storage above here for our suitcases. I have my sweaters, my belts, all that, and some shoe storage in there as well. So this right here is our big dresser. This was one of the big investments we made for this apartment. This is from Anthropologie, and I just loved the details on it. The dark wood, this fun scallop in the back, and the gold knobs. We needed a big dresser to fit all of our t-shirts and things. On the dresser here, I have this lamp from Birch Lane, my John Darien books, one of my favorite stores in New York, which has some great design inspiration, perfumes. I have this jewelry box, which is actually from Michael's. I love the block print design, and it actually stores so much, so I've had this for years, and it's a great addition and looks really pretty. We have some fun coffee table books here. You can never have too many. They're such a fun design elements, and peonies are my favorite flower in this fun Juliska vase here. And then I have to talk about the gallery wall. This came together so serendipitously with all of our different pieces that we've collected over the years together. And it's just a fun memory wall. I'll point out some of my favorite things. This up here, you'll notice that I collect matchbooks like many New Yorkers, and this matchbook up here is actually from my parents' wedding. I found it in a drawer in my grandmother's house, like somewhere in the back, and it's over 30 years old. They don't make them anymore, so it's super special. I knew that out of my whole collection, that one needed to be framed. We have some fun pictures of Aiden and I. This pennant we picked up on Nantucket that summer, and I had it framed at Framebridge with this really pretty frame that kind of looks like driftwood. You'll notice lots of coastal nods here. Aiden and I are both from New England. We grew up along the water, so lots of little hints back to our heritage. This is from a trip to Spain we took a few years ago. Here's a fun picture from Aiden visiting me when we were in college. This sketch here actually has a fun story. We were in Maine on vacation in an antique store, walked in, saw this right away, and it's actually a sketch of boats racing off Marblehead, Mass, which is my hometown. So it was so cool to walk into a random thrift store and see something from your hometown, so we bought it immediately. So this is our first date receipt here. We went to Trattoria Al Panino in the North End in Boston. It was such a fun day. It was right when everything was opening up after COVID, and we could finally sit outside and have our first dinner date. So after the date, I stole one of the customer copies, threw it in my bag, and I had it in there for, I don't know, just like crumpled at the bottom of a purse, and for some reason I saved it. Obviously I knew we'd be together for over 5 years in hindsight, and yeah, I had it framed for our 3rd year anniversary as a gift to Aiden as a surprise. And I actually have a video on my TikTok of Aiden opening it and the shock on his face when he sees where the receipt is from and the date and everything, and it's a really sweet moment and a fun thing to have on our wall to remind us of that memory. I went to college here in New York City. I went to Fordham University, and after going to college, I naturally moved to Manhattan with a few of my friends. I lived uptown for about 3 years while my boyfriend lived downtown, so when we decided we wanted to move in together, I decided it was time to try a new neighborhood, and I've always loved the West Village. It's so charming. There are so many great restaurants and bars. So we picked this as a location we wanted to move. We knew it would be super competitive to find an apartment down here, so that's why we started to look early. We were lucky enough to find this location, and that's why we took it right on the spot, because we knew it was a gem out of all the New York City apartments. So moving over to the bed area, something that was super important to Aiden and I when we were moving in together was we wanted 2 nightstands. There were so many apartments where the bed hits one wall, and it was super important that we had our own sides with all of our things. So this is a very tight space to fit a nightstand. These are actually from Facebook Marketplace. We couldn't find anything online that fit the dimensions, but I really love them. They have this cool argyle print here that makes them a little bit more unique. On my nightstand here, I just have my hatch, which I need when going to sleep. You need the white noise to drown out the sound of New York City. Some flowers, which just always make me smile. And then this picture up here is a copy of The New Yorker that I found on eBay. I love the print. It is a take on Blue Willow, which are that china. I grew up eating off of Blue Willow. My mom has a whole collection. She has it passed down from her mom. When I saw the New York City scape in Blue Willow, I knew I needed it. And yeah, I bought it off eBay and then had it framed. And I love that this red kind of complements the pretty red in the New Yorker. And it's really fun to have this on my bedside to wake up to every morning. The date is also the date of my parents' rehearsal dinner, so I love to find little meaning to tie all of our art back to something special in my life or Aiden's life. So let's talk about this peel and stick wallpaper. This is grass cloth wallpaper. It was definitely a fun relationship test to put peel and stick wallpaper up, but we both really love it in the end. It adds such a great texture to the wall and adds great dimension against this headboard. And then we tied all of the blues together with these sconces. The sconces themselves are just from Amazon. They're actually not hardwired. They just go on with a little remote like this. and you just click it on, which is really great. You just recharge them, and that way, as a renter, you're not hardwiring any electric. So the lampshades themselves, these are from Green Row. I love florals, I love block print. You'll see that all over the apartment, and I loved the navy, and they kind of tie it all together. Next, to talk about our headboard. This is something Aiden and I also DIY'd. We upholstered this ourselves. I saw the price of a custom headboard and I thought, I can make that myself. So I purchased an inexpensive one off of Wayfair that I liked the shape of. I then went to the fabric district, went to Mood Fabrics, and picked out this stripe, and we brought it home, laid it on the living room floor. Aiden went to Home Depot and got a staple gun. We watched a couple YouTube videos and just pulled the fabric from either end, stapled it all around the corners, and I think we did a pretty good job. It looks, I think, pretty professional. We kept the stripes pretty straight for working with, you know, a fabric that could go wonky on us. Then we did have extra fabric, so we sent it off to a woman I found on Etsy who makes these big bolster pillows so that it would match back. And I think it came out really great. It was so fun to get this in the mail and see it all match together. The comforter is from Wayfair, just a nice quilt. And then I have this big duvet. I think I learned it on TikTok or some home decor show. Put 2 duvet inserts inside your cover and it will make it super fluffy, almost like you're in a hotel. And when it gets cold here, these windows are super old and drafty. We love this big fluffy duvet. So moving over to the windows, these we really love. They're such a great element to have. They're south-facing, so during the day, light just pours in through the living room, and it's great to have the pocket doors wide open, so we get tons of bright light. Living in New York City, having light like this is definitely an amazing thing to have. You don't get light like this in a lot of apartments, and the windows themselves are really big. We also fell in love with the molding in this apartment. That was something when we first walked in, we couldn't believe it. It's an old building with some pre-war elements, and I think they're just so pretty and charming and really add and decorate the space. So we didn't want to put up curtains to cover that beautiful molding, so we put these little, I think they're Roman shades up. They're also from Amazon, super inexpensive, and they really just help, you know, decorate a bit, they add a little contrast against this molding, and really decorate these beautiful windows that we have here. The West Village is really great because it has many fun bars and restaurants, shops. It's very lively, but it's also super close to the West Side Highway, so we have access to the water when the city is feeling super crowded and we need some fresh air. It's also very quaint. There aren't any skyscrapers. It's lots of cute townhouses and homes with window boxes and people walking their dogs, so it's very charming and it's a fun place to walk around. There's lots of great history here. We actually live around the corner from the Friends apartment. You'll see lots of cute little plaques on the buildings here with lots of history. We also live near a music school, which is really fun because we can hear them practicing at night, and makes living here and makes living in a busy city relaxing and calming. So moving into the living room, right here is our little office area. I work from home a few days a week, and so does Aiden, so we needed some shared desk area. This one, I think, is from Wayfair as well. We need something small to fit inside this little corner here. I really loved the legs on this, even though it's just a simple desk, and then I added a fun knob on there to make it a little prettier. We really wanted a white desk since we have a lot of dark wood in here, just to break it up and change it up a bit. I have my fun calendar, a little light, and then some books just to make it prettier while I'm working here. So for art above the desk here, I saw this idea on Pinterest of using vintage tennis rackets. So I found these 2 on Facebook Marketplace, and they work as really cool frames. Some of the things we have paper clipped on there. We have a picture from our first college party together. We have like an old hotel key, some postcards, other random pictures and things. And we both like to keep a box of just memories, postcards, things from over the years. So when we got these 2, it was so fun to pull out those boxes and pull out little mementos that we wanted to almost frame on these tennis rackets. And I think they came out really great, and they're such a unique piece to have hanging on the wall here. So when we toured this unit, the renters that were occupying the space had lots of big, bulky furniture. They honestly didn't lay it out too functionally. Everything took up lots of visual space. They had big cabinets, and there are pretty high ceilings in here. So when we went about designing our space, we wanted it to be a lot more functional. We made sure we had measurements of everything so that furniture fit perfectly. Since it is technically one big, long room, we wanted to be able to section it off into little living spaces. So it felt, as I said, more functional and easy to live here. So moving over to this bookshelf, this is a piece I had in my last apartment, and it fits so perfectly in this little nook in the brick here. This is something I love to decorate, redecorate, move things around, display different things I get, different books and things. So at the top here we have some pictures of our families, and then you'll see lots of these little ceramics around the apartment. Aiden actually made those in a college ceramics class, and I just love them. They're so cute. And we like to scatter them around the apartment with different succulents or just as a little decorative element. Moving down to this shelf, this is my large matchbook collection. As I mentioned, I really love to collect matchbooks whenever I travel or if I'm at a restaurant, and they're definitely overflowing. I'll pull out a few. I just went to Sun Valley for work, so I grabbed one there. And here's one from Red Hook Tavern in Brooklyn, all different events and things. I like to collect them. We make them a lot for work events, so it's fun to have a memento of a project I work on and kind of see them all in the jars. They're so pretty in all different colors, so I definitely need to get another jar, I think, to keep my collection going. Moving down, we just have some books, and then down here, this picture Aiden actually sketched for me of us for, I think, maybe like our first anniversary. As I said, he's a really great artist. You'll see different pieces of his art throughout the apartment, and it's one of the things I love about him, and I love this little picture he sketched for me. I think it's really cute and fun to have as a memory. And then at the bottom there, I have my collection of Vogue magazines. I've had a subscription since I think I moved to Manhattan. I can't get myself to throw them out once I get them, so I just stack them, and I think they look kind of cool all stacked up like that from over the years. Moving on to our couch, we needed a certain size couch, as I said, to fit this small space. This one is from IKEA. We don't know how long we'll be in this apartment, so we don't really want to invest in anything too crazy since we don't know what will fit in the next space we live. And this IKEA couch was perfect, not too expensive. It looks pretty great. It's also a slipcover couch, so God forbid we spill anything, you can throw it right in the washer machine and clean it. And then since it's just kind of a cream color, I wanted to dress it up a little with a few fun throw pillows. These I've collected, I think, over the years. I'm not quite sure where they're from, but I love block print pillows. It's my touch of adding some florals and adding some girliness in here where I can. This throw here is from Brooklinen. It's super cozy and huge and great for when you're just watching a movie on the couch. Moving along, we're so lucky to have a window in our living room. Even though it faces a brick wall, it does let in a little bit of light. We added those same Roman shades up here to accent this beautiful molding that you see throughout the apartment that makes it super special. We have a few little plants to liven the space up a bit. And then we have my favorite chair, this striped chair. This was the first thing I bought for this apartment. I knew I wanted some type of statement chair. I really wanted a floral chair, but that didn't fly with Aiden, a little too girly. So we compromised and went for stripes, which you can't go wrong with blue and white stripes. You'll notice I love blue and white. And I found this chair on Wayfair on like super sale. There was like one left, and I bought it when I was living at my old apartment, and I had it shipped to my old apartment. I think my roommates thought I was crazy, but I really wanted this chair, and it made it here. It's so comfortable, it's really deep, and then same thing, I added a nice block print pillow to add in my florals, and it's really great. It fits the space perfectly. when we went about designing the space, as I said, we wanted it to be super functional. We used Pinterest. We both made our own Pinterest boards and kind of tried to combine both of our styles. We're very lucky and we both love kind of a traditional classic style, simple. I love florals and colors more than Aiden does, so we had to compromise on a few things here and there. But we started in sections, starting with the furniture first, just to make sure it fits since it's such a unique space. And then from there, we added lots of decorative elements, fun pillows, vases, and things that we've collected from our journeys, from our hometowns, from our adventures, and things to make it feel like home. So there are lots of memorable special items in this apartment that are meaningful to both Aiden and I, but one thing that really sticks out to me is this quilt here, that it's not in the best shape. It's definitely been very loved over the years. This is my grandmother's aunt's wedding quilt, and as you can see, each square was sewn by an individual that was special to her. Their name is imprinted in the middle here, and then each square was sewn together to make it into a quilt as a wedding gift for her. So this was something my mom had in her apartments, my grandmother had, and it has been passed down to me. It is time to take it to the dry cleaner and get some reinforcements on it, but it's just so special and meaningful, and we honestly rarely use it as an actual blanket. It's more of a decorative element. I really love the colors and the different fabrics. They're all so pretty, and it's just super special to have sitting out on an ottoman here. So here is our coffee table. This we got, I think, from Bed Bath & Beyond. We needed something small. We wanted dark wood to kind of match back to the dark wood floors that are naturally in here. It's really the perfect size that you can decorate a bit with it, but you can put your feet up, you can have a drink, place it down. So I've just decorated it with a few coffee table books, flowers, and candles. This is my favorite candle ever. It's from Mullen & Goats, the tomato scent. And since, our kitchen is right into our living room, it's fun to have a fresh scent throughout the space, and it smells amazing. A fun thing about this coffee table, I actually originally ordered this side table as our coffee table, didn't realize that the measurements were off, and it was way too small to be a coffee table, but it fit perfectly as an end table here, and it honestly was a happy mistake, I guess. So this is our little dining table. We knew we definitely wanted some type of seating area. As I mentioned, Aiden really loves to cook, so I wanted somewhere we could sit and enjoy his meals. We also wanted something that had leaves on it so that if we did have people over, we could expand it and fit a couple more people. But for now, it's perfect for the two of us right here. This was another Facebook Marketplace find along with these chairs. I often like to find something I like online and then just type it into Facebook Marketplace, see if I can find someone selling it, and chances are someone in New York. There's so many people, you'll find it. And I think it fits so perfectly here. We went through a lot of tables to find this one, so we really love it. I have this fun fruit bowl. This is from Tory Burch, and I just love this pattern here. Some nice taper candles, and then this art here is super special to us. We wanted a big piece of art to fit above this table, and I'm a big fan of Slim Aaron, so I was scrolling through his catalog and I stumbled upon this picture. I thought it was really cool, and I started reading the description, and it happens to be shot in the harbor of my hometown of Marblehead. So I thought it was so cool, and as I said, I love to find pieces of art that have things that tie back and make them a bit more meaningful. And then we have this just fun little gallery light. Unfortunately, since we are renters, it doesn't fit perfectly over our electric box here. So we just work with the space, and I think it looks fine even though the electric box is out there. So we really do love this apartment. It's super special with the different unique elements in here. However, if there is one thing to change, I would love just to make it bigger in general, make the bedroom bigger, make the closets bigger, but we are in New York City, so you usually have limited space here. I would love just to make the bedroom bigger so that you could fit more things in there, some bigger nightstands, and just have a bit more space for storage. So now we move from the dining area right over into the kitchen. This little nook here was another spot that was kind of difficult to find a piece of furniture to fit. We knew we needed to extend the kitchen counter. We needed a little bit more space to cook as well as storage for our pots and pans. But the space was super deep and we kept finding things that were really short and narrow. Luckily, we found this on Wayfair. And we really love it. It's super sturdy. It also came unfinished, so I think it could have another life one day. We could paint it, we could finish it, but for now I really love the unfinished wood. It matches our nice big cutting board here that Aiden's often cooking at. I also have my big jar of flour. I recently learned how to make sourdough and I'm very into it, so I have to have my flour out so that I'm ready to bake a loaf whenever. A tea kettle because I'm a big tea drinker. And then moving along to these floating shelves. When I was looking for inspiration for this apartment, I found that I was pinning lots of pictures of kitchens with big open shelves with their glassware displayed. So this seemed like the perfect area to add in those shelves. I wanted to do a white color to complement the gray paint that was already here when we got here, and then also match back to that molding that we love so much. So on our shelves here, we have some cookbooks. We have a Maddie Matheson cookbook. We love his recipes. My boyfriend Aiden really loves him, so that one is front and center, and I love the yellow color of this one. We also have Missy Robbins' pasta book. Missy and Lilia are two of our favorite restaurants here in New York City, so we have to keep that one out. And then this one right here is actually a cookbook I had made for Aiden that we can add in all of the recipes we cook together. If we find something online, we can add it in if we like it. So it's fun to have our own cookbook up there, and then a couple other little elements to make it fun and stylize it. For the art up here, this is another special piece. This is a pastel that Aiden actually made when he was in middle school, and I think it's so pretty. I love the colors in it. It really ties everything together. It's such a serene picture, and it's fun to have a piece of his childhood art in here. And then I just framed it with this beautiful Aryan frame that matches back with the golds, and this is one of my favorite little areas of the apartment. I just think the colors are so fun, and we're always kind of in here cooking and hanging out, so it's really pretty. So moving into the kitchen, it was something we also really wanted in an apartment was a kitchen that opened up into the space, a place that, as I said, we could entertain, and if we're cooking, we're not away from the party or from the other person. This is a very open kitchen, but we really love it, and it's very functional. We're very lucky, and we have a dishwasher, which is something I didn't have in New York City. We also have a washer dryer, so we really hit the jackpot with this apartment. It's actually a pretty great size for New York as well, so it's really great to have those elements here. Moving on to this cabinet, this glass cabinet wasn't something I necessarily loved when we first walked in. I thought it could look a little messy if you can see all your cups and things, but I've really grown to love it. I think it looks super cool, and as we grow, you know, our plate collection, our mugs, it's something that's fun to look into right when you walk into our apartment. Aiden and I both really love to host. Aiden is an amazing chef. He's a really great cook, and I love to do tablescapes and setup, so we're really a match made in heaven to host lots of people over. Although the space is small, we've really configured different ways to have people over. One of the things we've done in the past, we move out this coffee table, we put a big long table down the middle, throw a tablecloth on it, we'll use the couch as seating, and then an ottoman over here as additional seating, and we can fit maybe like 10 people, which is a good amount. It works great to have a dinner party because the kitchen is, you know, right behind the living room here. It's great that the kitchen is open to our guests so they can sit and chat and have a drink while we're cooking and serving and all that. And then these doors, the pocket doors here are great, so they divide the bedroom so that it feels like more of an intimate space and less of a studio apartment, I guess. And yeah, we really love to host. One day I dream of having a big dining room table and all that to host people, but for now we make it work, and it's really fun to have everyone together. And people don't mind sitting on the floor. That's part of living in New York. The kitchen also doubles as our entryway. So this piece, I'm not quite sure where we found this, but I really loved the dark color, I loved the dark wood, and I loved the legs on here. It's a great storage item. Most things in this apartment double as storage since it's a small space. So we can keep like our dish towels and tablecloths and tools in these big drawers. And then this bottom part here also doubles as shoe storage. So as we're walking in the apartment, you can kind of slide your shoes right under, which is a nice add. I have decorated this with a couple fun things. We have some cookbooks on here. I have a nice little bowl for our keys. These are actually custom matches I had made for our apartment with our name on them, and so that now when guests come, they can take a little memento like I do at a restaurant, and I think they're super cute and match back to kind of the whole theme we have going on here. Some dried hydrangeas, which I love and are great because they last all year long and you don't have to refresh them. This mirror here, I got this off Facebook Marketplace as well. I really love the frame on it, and these little pictures here are from Boston. My mom and I were in Beacon Hill, and we stumbled upon this antique store that sells them. The artist is John Young, and he does all these cute minis. So I picked out these 3, but I'm itching to go back and get more and kind of grow my collection a bit because they're super cute and really special. This lamp here is from Pookie Lighting. I love the green, and the lampshade itself is from Etsy, which I think is a fun shape and lets off lots of great light in this dark part of the apartment. The rug here, this is a ruggable rug, which I had received so many ads for and I really wanted to try it out. I like the pattern on it, but it's great because it is washable. This is a high traffic area, and it's perfect for a kitchen, hallway, entry duo. One great thing about living in a rented apartment is that often you get the landlord special, they call it, where you call them to fix something and they don't necessarily do the best job. So we had them repair these holes from a previous renter, and when my super came up to fix it, he thought he brought the right color paint and happened to grab the wrong color. Noticed after he had painted the wall, couldn't find the actual right color. So now we have this fun square on the wall. So eventually I think we need to find some art to cover it because it's not my favorite thing. But that's just part of being a renter and living in New York City. It comes with some really great things, but then some odd things. So here towards the entry of the apartment, we have a coat closet, which is a great add to have. We also have really great above storage in this apartment. So up here, we just keep like towels and sheets in these nice baskets. There's even storage up around there where we can put an AC unit or Aiden's golf clubs or whatever it is. It's nice to have an extra spot just to kind of store things. We also have our bathroom in here where we do have a washer and dryer, which is amazing. I did not have one in my last apartment, and it really changes the game when you're living in New York City. Ever since I was little, I really have loved art and design in kind of any form, whether it's interior design and really beautiful spaces or clothing. I've always loved fashion, and that's what led me to my job now working for J. Crew. I'm on the marketing side, but it's so fun to work cross-functionally with the designers and see the different clothing and how they pull everything together. But on the personal side, interiors have always been really special to me. It's something my mom really loves, and it's just so nice to make your space like a home, especially in this busy city where we're renting apartments. And I'm lucky enough to have a boyfriend who also really loves art and design. And because of that, we kind of collaborate and work together and get excited to make, our space really special for the two of us. This home is super special to me because it is the first apartment I've shared with my boyfriend. It's been so special to kind of combine our lives here and work on this apartment as kind of a project together, bounce ideas off each other, find furniture together, and kind of make it our space together. We've both lived with so many different roommates, and it's fun to have something that will be our own and to have these memories and different pieces that will carry with us through our next home, eventually to buy a house, those things. We really love this space, and it's been so special to, combine our styles and the things we love. Thank you, Homeworthy, for touring my home, but I gotta get back to work now. Bye.
Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Lauren Clark, and welcome to my New York City apartment. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Lauren Clark. Welcome to my one-bedroom apartment on the Upper East Side. I am from New Jersey originally, and I work in interior design now, and I love to do all things home. I always have, so I kind of do all sorts of renter-friendly hacks and tricks in my Upper East Side apartment, and I love to show people how you can make a rental feel like a home. I love the energy of New York. I know that's a cliche, and I specifically love the Upper East Side because it feels like a cozy little neighborhood in the middle of Manhattan, and we've got parks on both sides of our apartment, so we've got water and just like openness, which makes the Upper East Side feel just so peaceful and so different than the hustle and bustle of Manhattan. It was 2022, my boyfriend and I were looking to move in together. I was home in Maryland and he was in Long Island. So we had waited to find a place that kind of ticked all of our boxes, natural light being the number one. We gave up some things, so we gave up a dishwasher, laundry, that sort of thing, but we said natural light trumps all. So it's funny because he actually saw the apartment and we weren't able to FaceTime because people were living here at the time. So he was basically like, it looks good, it looks like it does online, we'll make it our own. And I was like, okay, I trust you, and we signed it. So I saw it when we moved in. And it was pretty much a blank canvas. It had good bones, it had exposed brick. It just had a good feel to it. And we loved the neighborhood and we went for it. Welcome to my entryway in our small one-bedroom New York City apartment. I wanted to make sure that even though it's a small space, all the spaces felt fun and pretty and aesthetic and also designed. And I wanted everything to have a function. In a small space, you don't have a lot of wiggle room on storage and sort of doing things just because. So in our entryway, I wanted to make sure I had a spot where I could stand in front of the mirror before work, kind of grab whatever I need, place to drop my keys, but I also wanted it to feel like a nice spot when I come home from work. It just feel pretty kind of always. I love to use faux florals. These are faux snowball hydrangeas because they are no maintenance and they always look pretty, and I wanted something to fill this space here. I needed a cabinet that was budget and also had storage. So I love this one I got from Wayfair. It's got these turned legs, and I thought that was a nice touch. I just stacked some books here. I've got some matches. This is a little silver bowl that I got from a thrift store in Virginia, and I love to pick up pieces wherever I can because I love to look back and be like, oh, that was fun. That was such a fun day when I did that. I grabbed a bunch of unique pieces, and now every time I sort of look at it, it's like a nice little treat. And I love to collect matches. That's a free hack. Most places in New York and really everywhere, there are all sorts of matchboxes you can get, and they've got all different colors and designs or whatever. It's the restaurant, but I always think that's fun to sort of look back and be like, oh, I forgot I did that, or I went to this place. Or you can also just buy some that have pretty designs, and I love to just throw them in to a little bowl or a little tray, and it just adds some color and flair. Next part of our entryway, I wanted to have a little coat hanging moment without having a big hefty coat rack. So I have, my favorite hack is taking out pages out of coffee table books. So I love to go to a thrift store, buy an art coffee table book. You can kind of poke through them and see if there's pieces in there that you might be able to turn into art, and that is just like the best way to make a bunch of art for not a lot of money. So both of these pieces are actually from a coffee table book that I thrifted on the Upper East Side. This is a vintage frame. I think this is a frame from Home Goods. And I wanted to just put a little blue and a little green here as sort of like an introduction to the rest of the apartment. This is actually a bag from my grandma. This is a hat that my boyfriend got at a rodeo. I wanted it to just feel pretty, but also functional. So adding art into a space like this is just the best way to kind of make it feel cozy, and it doesn't feel so sterile. I also wanted this moment when you walk in to not feel so crazy. So like, I'm not hanging my reusable Target bag out here. There is shoved in my closet, you can't see, but I've got some pretty neutrals out here. I love to sort of lean into like the straw and the leather and then the deep brown, because all of these at the end of the day are neutrals. And I think if all your neutrals are the same color, it feels flat. But layering different materials and different colors and different kind of saturations really make it feel kind of like a moment. So when I walk in, this to me feels styled, but it's also so functional. So this is a funny little moment here. It typically collects random returns and things like that. So instead of having an extra chair that would just pile up with things, as we all know how that goes, I always have frames that I'm interchanging art with. So sometimes I'll get sick of something and I'm like, all right, I really want to change that out. So I kind of always keep these IKEA frames and I rotate things. Honestly, this is craft paper that I painted with white watercolor, so it's nothing fancy, but it kind of makes this corner feel intentional without feeling cluttered. So that way it's not an empty space, but it's also not like a pit for collecting things. And I kind of like the leaning, it feels a little casual. With our rugs in our apartment, everything is super durable. This is from Wayfair, it's the Leloy line. And I think they're both actually Amber Interiors collaboration with them. They're super thin, super durable. They're polypropylene, so it's very like something spills on this, no biggie. And again, nothing in our apartment is so precious. I don't want to live that way. I didn't want it to be like a white rug when you walk in and you're tracking dirt and then you're like, oh my God, it's ruined. So I love that these colors kind of camouflage anything. And they're super easy to keep clean and they just add a little bit of warmth. I love neutrals and blues and greens, but I also think if you just stick with those colors, it feels a bit showroomy. So I actually introduce a little bit of this blush and a little bit of gray and a little bit of like pink and mauve, which also carries into our living room rug. Come take a look at our living room. So in our living room, this is sort of, I don't know, the nth iteration of it. When we first moved in, I had a lot of like different bright colors of coffee table books and cookbooks and just different things. And it was almost just too overstimulating. But when we first moved in, we've lived here now 2.5 years. So we've sort of curated it into be what it is now. But when we first started, it was just a blank space. And I love that we had the brick wall. And from there, it's really gone through a bunch of different versions of itself. And we finally landed on, I actually just added my little desk in this corner here because it felt like a fun little moment to put some extra art. And it's super practical for work from home days in front of a window. But I think that like throughout the few years of living here, I've picked up different pieces from thrift stores, and I've gone up to Hudson or Cold Spring or wherever and just pick up fun little pieces that are sentimental. And I think that adding in a bunch of those and accumulating things like books over time really sort of make it feel like the space it is now. And there are pieces in here that I look at them and I'm like, oh, that sparks joy, and I love to look at them. Which is why I think I share so much of this room, because there are so many things going on, but it doesn't feel like a headache. And I think that's the great thing with playing with neutrals is you can have a lot of things and you can layer a lot of things, but at the end of the day, it doesn't feel overstimulating, which is in my first iteration, that's how it felt. It felt like I had reds and blues and greens, but super saturated, and then like a yellow vase and you know, an orange picture frame. And I was just like, oh my God, there's so much happening. In our space, the first thing we purchased for our apartment was this IKEA sofa. We have a really small hallways outside. They're super narrow. So we needed a sofa that we'd be able to assemble inside. So I actually purchased this in Maryland and brought it on a U-Haul up to this apartment. It was the first thing we had here. And we didn't want to go with something so light. I really pushed for like a white or a really light cream, but my boyfriend was like, that's just not practical. And at first I was like, oh my gosh, I really have to fight him on this. And it ended up being great because it is just, a lot of people I think are shocked that not shocked, but a lot of people are like, oh, it's so nice to see someone with a dark sofa, because so many apartments that people see nowadays are super white and bright and clean and have white or cream sofas. So I kind of like that this is a little bit more unexpected maybe, but I lightened it up with our pillows. So I love to save everywhere pretty much where I can. So all of our pillows are a combination of Amazon and HomeGoods. And I love, my favorite tip is to switch out the inserts. So those two big pillows, and I love big pillows. I don't like the look of teeny tiny pillows on a big blank space because I feel like it's such a missed opportunity. And I love stripes, as you can tell, but I love neutrals with a little bit of other color infused. So I love the wide stripe paired with the smaller stripe paired with the blue, and then on this side the same but with the green. I don't think you can ever go wrong with a stripe and a floral combo, so this is like exactly what's happening here. But all of these are items that we've saved on. I mean, our sofa's IKEA, our sconces here are Amazon. This frame above our art is one of my other DIY hacks. So I bought this big frame at a thrift store, and it had this ugly kind of piece of art in it, which is not a problem. I wanted it for the size of the frame because buying big art is super pricey. So I went down to Mood, the fabric store, and I picked up this really pretty piece of gray and navy fabric, and I made it into a piece of art. So this whole area was kind of the foundation of our apartment. The pillows, when we first moved in, I had bright pillows. I had pinks and I had oranges because I love those colors just in life. But in my home, I didn't want to feel overstimulated when you come out of the crazy city. So I think that sticking with neutrals is the best way to make a space feel calm without feeling boring by infusing different colors and patterns with it. Our coffee table is another budget find. It's from Target. In my opinion, it looks like $1 million, and I just wanted a light wood. I didn't want to introduce any other materials. I like the look of the wood paired with the dark charcoal sofa, but what I did do is layer in fun pieces. So things are super practical, but also super pretty. So like this, for example, gorgeous bone and lay box, right? I got it from HomeGoods, but it stores all of our remotes. So it's perfectly functional, and I don't have to look at all of the remotes. So I love doing little things like that, especially in a small space. You really need to like hone in on storage. So things like that to me are just a perfect hack. So I just like to layer things. So I keep saying that, but like a book with a box on top and then fun trinkets. Like these are dice that I got with a friend. We went up to Hudson, New York. We spent the day and we went thrifting, and we got these at the first store we went to. It's a cute little coffee shop, and we were like, how fun is that? And every time I look at them, I'm like, oh, what a treat. You'll see that's a theme, but I love to pick up things where I can. So this, I love to add extra texture where I can too. So this tray is another budget HomeGoods find, and I wanted it to feel like it wasn't 3 just stacks that were the same. I wanted them to feel slightly different. So that's why I like to also mix and match with height. This vessel is also thrifted from a thrift store up on the Upper East Side. Probably got it for like $5 to $10, but I think it just adds so much flair to it. Again, matches are something I love to collect. So this I got actually recently at a thrift store, Luckett's. It's a cute little town in Virginia, and they've got like amazing home decor finds, but a huge matchbox like this with really long matches, which is just like so fun. And I like to have the top peek out a little bit because the blue is, you know, why not? And then over here is another thrifted find. So I got this silver tray. It's got little footies on the bottom. And I got this at a thrift store in Cold Spring, and I was on my way out, had a million things, and I saw it and I was like, I really wanted just like a big catch-all for all my matches. I love to show my matches because they're just fun. They add color. It's not so serious. But when I bought it, it was super tarnished. So I think that's why people kept passing up on it, because it had really good bones. But it was pretty much black, and you could see on the bottom that there was silver. So I did a like a silver cleaner, and I removed all the tarnish, and it looks like $1 million. And I think I probably got it for like $15. But to me, it just tells like such a fun story, and it adds so much flair. So now my coffee table, while it's functional, with our remotes and a place to drop your drink and a place to, you know, eat, all of that, it's still pretty, and it also has little bits and pieces of moments that I like to look back on fondly. And I think that is just the key to making a space feel like you. It doesn't feel so serious, but it feels like, oh sure, I'll just plop here with my book, because it feels super inviting. So this corner was like my most hated nook in our apartment for the longest time. I just couldn't figure out what I wanted to do with it. And I felt like it was just collecting things, and it was just, oh, I hated it. But when you walk in, it's the first thing you see. So I was like, okay, I'm determined to make this feel like a cute, cozy little nook. And so I did a few different things to sort of pull that off. First, a DIY hack. we have our steam radiator here because it's an old New York City building. And what my dad helped me do is build this wood structure, and then I got these aluminum sheets and I painted them white. So now when you look at this, it's not such an eyesore, and it's just, yeah, you know something's going on over there, but it's not this horrible looking old radiator. I got this brown velvet chair from Target, and my favorite hack to do is a lot of furniture from Amazon or Target, they tend to be pretty short, and I knew I wanted it to be a little taller because when I first put in the Target chair, it felt a little squatty and it felt a bit disconnected. So I got these legs from Amazon, maybe $20, and I screwed them in instead. So I wanted to add a little bit of flair too. So the legs that they came with were straight and just like a very light wood. And I wanted to add in something with a little bit of interest, so a little bit of a turn and a dark wood. And I think that now it makes the chair feel way more luxurious than it is just a Target chair. And I knew I wanted to add in some color. So adding in a pop of blue here felt just like a fun nod to the rest of the apartment because I've got blues, I've got greens, and all brown and all neutral felt just too disconnected. I liked it as the base, but I knew I needed a little something. So honestly, the animal print is unexpected from the rest of my space, but it feels good. It feels right because it's got white in it. It's not shiny or anything like that. It just feels like a pretty print. And I think that it makes this space feel like interesting because it's a little more unexpected. And the art here, my favorite thing to do is just do a little pairing of 2 pieces of art, 3 pieces of art. I just love that look. So that is a Target frame that I took a piece of craft paper and I did some watercolors. And then above that is a thrifted frame and then a thrifted piece of art. I think it was probably a print from a shop downtown. And I've cut that print into like 3 different pieces of art in my apartment. I'll show you them. But it's just like a neutral base, and I love that the colors are soft, neutral, but they're not flat. And I think that this corner is like my favorite in the apartment now, and it gets so much airtime on my TikTok because I think so many people kind of resonate with that cozy reading nook that you see in all these movies. And I kind of brought it to life, and I just love how it looks. So this lamp is one of my favorites. It's from Target. Everything's from Target. It's a gooseneck lamp, and it's got this really pretty rattan shade to it. And because of the warmth of the shade itself, the light it emits is really pretty and soft. And I think that it's something interesting, which is my kind of key to making a space feel curated and unique, is that I didn't just go for like a straight lamp with like a linen drum shade, which I've got in other spots, don't get me wrong. But over here, I wanted it to sort of pack a punch because I knew I was just doing a chair and a lamp. So adding interest in the color and the material and the shape of it really makes it feel like this cool moment. And I love how it looks. And at night, it's just so cozy. This area is kind of my second iteration. When we first moved in, I didn't know what to do with this space, and it just felt like a missed opportunity. Once I hung the curtains, I was like, okay, now we're framing this up for something cool, for this to be a fun moment. So at first we had a bar cart that was like black glass with gold. I'm not really sure why we went for that. And then I ended up DIYing the black, and I kind of put this like linen peel and stick over it to sort of soften it. And it still just felt so harsh, and it felt a little bit dorm roomy, if I'm being honest. So after a while, I was like, just not loving it. And I kind of hated this area until I got it right. So I ended up going for a really dark bar cart, and that's what I knew I wanted. Once I was moving away from the gold, I knew I wanted something rich and sophisticated looking, but I wasn't gonna spend. So I actually got this from Amazon, and people are always like so incredibly shocked by that. And I agree, because it's a big, big piece. It holds a lot. The color is nice. It's not shiny or anything. It's got these wheels on it. It just, to me, looks like an heirloom piece that someone's always had. And I knew I wanted to be able to stack and layer things here, so this could feel like a moment. And I think that the dark plays really well with the light curtains and the light walls. And I just think it feels, especially at night, it just feels like a library kind of. It feels sort of super cozy. And you kind of feel like you're in a secluded, like a wine bar or something like that. So these pieces I get a lot of questions about because I do show this particular angle in our apartment quite a bit. So this is a piece my mom painted years and years and years ago, and it was just sitting in our attic, and I loved the color, and I didn't have quite a spot for it in mind, but I knew I would find a place for it. So I hung it here and could not figure out what to do here. And it took me, a bunch of different versions of hanging different pieces together for it not to feel so crazy. And I think that this bright teal works in this space with the rest of the room because I balanced it out with a super neutral piece of art. Which this art I get so many questions about, and it's so funny to me because it's literally a piece of poster board from Target, and then I took Crayola watercolors and did little loops because I had seen on Pinterest or other things online this sort of looped art, and I liked how it looked. I liked that it was simple, I liked that it wasn't boring, but I liked that it added a little color. So I thought that pairing these together was just like a fun contradiction. And I think it really plays well too with that gold picture lamp, and that's from Amazon. I love to mix highs and lows, and I think that it really makes it feel like this is a fixed piece of our apartment. And I've also layered in things like I love my dried hydrangeas, and I get these from Etsy. And I love the green because they require zero maintenance, and they just always stay pretty. And I've got fun things like this I picked up at a thrift store. It's this really fun seashelled, I don't know what I would call it, platter, no, tray maybe. And I just think something like that is fun and unexpected, and it pops so well on the dark wood. And then we've got things down here that, these my mom gave me from her grandparents, and my grandparents had some other glassware. So I've got things layered in that are new, but also mixed with old. And I think that's how you strike the balance between something feeling so stark and showroomy is when you mix in the personal pieces that tell a story. I think that makes it feel cozy. So this bookcase is from IKEA, and it's actually 3 pieces. So this is like a bookcase tower with concealed storage down here, and this is a dresser. And then that over there is the same bookcase. So I wanted it to be a fun place to display things that were pretty and kind of added personality to the space without it being overstimulating. So on my first go of the bookcases, I had a lot of crazy colors and it was just too much. So I pared it down. And a fun thing to do and an easy hack to do is any book that's got a crazy spine, but you want to use, you can always flip them around. So now you're just seeing the pages of the books. So this still reads super neutral, but the actual spines of those, some of those are red. And I also like to do things like I have photos of me and my boyfriend, and I've got them in black and white with a fun frame, because when you've got too many colors, you kind of get a little lost in the sauce and it feels a bit crazy. So putting them in black and white is one of my favorite things to do because it still adds personality and it still adds that little, personal touch to your space, but it's not introducing other colors that aren't in the rest of your space, and it feels like it's distracting. Our bookcases in here get a lot of traction online. So they are just modular shelves from IKEA, but what I did a little DIY hack. So I put peel and stick wallpaper on the back of it, and I also put wood contact paper on the shelf. So everything was all white to begin with, and it just felt too harsh on the brick wall. The all red wall with the all white just felt too disconnected. So I thought that softening it with the wood contact paper just really made it feel nice and cozy. And then once I did that, I lived with that for a while. And once I had painted our bedroom and I was like, all right, I'm gonna go back to some wallpaper. And I just put a neutral but printed wallpaper on the back here. So it honestly feels more like a built-in than it does a piece from IKEA. And I think sometimes people are shocked that they're not like custom built-ins or anything, because they do feel more lived in. And a lot of the pieces here, again, are accumulation of things over time. So some of these books are thrifted from thrift stores, or some of these boxes, like these are from Home Goods, and I like to add height because I think that makes things look interesting. I don't want everything to feel horizontal, and I don't want everything to feel vertical. And I also think always adding a floral or a green makes your space feel alive. So I've got florals all over, and a plant like this is super practical in New York because it doesn't require a lot of light and a lot of maintenance. But again, it adds a little bit of life to the space. And it doesn't feel like a showroom. I love random pieces like this. This was an egg that I got at a thrift store down on the Lower East Side, and I found this little ring that it sits on, and it wasn't sold together. It was with something else, and they were like, oh yeah, you can mix that stand with that. So this piece, I just like think it's so fun and pretty and adds just a fun flair. And I am obsessed with the mini lamps. So I've got lamps everywhere, table lamps, floor lamps, and this you can put like a rechargeable bulb in here, and it just sits and it's so cute. So this desk area is kind of a funny story. So this was a desk that a friend had in her apartment and was getting rid of. It was like a vanity. So we had it in our bedroom, and I used to work from home in there, and there's like not as much natural light in there at all. And it was just collecting stuff pretty much. So we were like, why don't we pull it out? I'm gonna make a little nook here. I used to have a table here with a tablecloth over it. And honestly, it was like a catch-all spot for a soccer ball or pickleball rackets, tennis rackets. And it was, I could kind of like conceal it under this tablecloth. But we didn't have the luxury to just have like spots to store stuff like that. So I decided to move our desk from our bedroom out here, and now it's great for days when I work from home and when my boyfriend works from home. And it's so nice because it's by the window and it gets a ton of natural light. And I wanted it to be not so stark white because yes, the desk is white and the rest of our apartment has bits of white, but I wanted it still to feel so connected to the rest. So I made this little gallery wall of different thrifted frames, home good frames, prints from coffee table books. This is actually, these butterflies are from a poster that my boyfriend and I went downtown. We got, it was this poster from like somewhere down in the seaport, and I liked the butterflies, and so I cut them out. This was a big map from a thrift store up in Hudson, and I basically cut it into little pieces. So I've got other parts of this throughout the apartment, but I liked the blue, and I liked that it was ripped and lived in, and it's from the 1920s. So I think stuff like that is just so cool and interesting, because I also want art to feel like there's a reason for it. I didn't want to just put Target art on the walls that kind of mean nothing and don't add so much. And I think that adding in blues and greens here and the unexpected, the burlwood, and then like random things like this, like a stacked set of books with this cabbage pot that I got. I think that things like that make it feel like, oh, someone lives here and there's a personality. So before I take you into the kitchen, I want to talk about our little bar counter moment. Another budget find. All of our bar stools are from Target. We used to have these dark leather with black leg bar stools that we got when we first moved in. There wasn't much design thought behind it. It was just, we needed them and we needed them fast. So I wanted to opt for something lighter and a bit airier, and I just love how these look. And this is another funny art DIY moment. So I wanted this to feel, again, connected to the rest of our apartment, and I wanted to take advantage of this big blank wall. So I just did a little watercolor moment with some, again, poster board from Target, and then Crayola watercolors, and I just mixed some blues and greens, and I didn't want it to feel so blue or so green, so it's kind of why it ended up like a little bit of like a seafoamy blue. And I just think that this is a fun peek into the rest of the kitchen where I've got blues, I've got greens, and I've got neutrals, and I just think it's a little bit of fun color and flair to add to this wall to make it feel like a moment. The art in my apartment is funny because I've DIY'd a lot of it, and it's not so much out of a love for art. I mean, I love making things look nice, but I also am so cognizant of budget. So sometimes it's just out of necessity where I figured I didn't exactly know what I wanted and I wasn't gonna spend time looking for a print and buying these prints, where I was like, I can just basically craft it on my own, and then I can tweak it. So if I made them and I was like, oh, it's a little too blue, I could just go ahead and add green. It's kind of a funny story how I got here, but I was making charcuterie boards that actually started as a hobby and a means for me to, as a creative outlet, and then it turned into a full-fledged business. And so I did that for a few years, and then I actually met my old boss, who I did a board and a whole presentation for a Golden Globes party. And it ended up being, we worked so well together, I ended up working for her full time. So we worked in events and we did TV and movie premieres, and I was between LA and New York quite a bit, but it really made me realize how much I loved the design part of what I was doing, and I felt like I was getting closer to what I've always loved, which is all things home. So I basically used my apartment to build a portfolio for myself. And I would do different things around it. I would peel and stick, and I would sort of film. And then I realized that, like, oh, this could be my way back into interior design. And I basically used my space to create a portfolio. And that's sort of how I got into interior design now, which is what I do full time. I think why people follow me online on my TikTok in particular is I like to show people that you can sort of reimagine any space, especially in a New York City apartment. When we moved in, everything was a blank space. And I said, like, I'm gonna make this into a home. I wanted, after a long day of work and the craziness of Manhattan, to come home and feel like calm and feel peace and quiet. So we've kind of carved out this little slice of heaven for ourselves up here. And I think that a lot of people really resonate with that, not living in a fancy luxury building and making it feel cozy and like a home. And I think that there's a lot of layering and things that I do in here that sort of make it feel that way. But honestly, I think that most people come to my page because of how it makes them feel. Like, I look at my space and I'm like, oh, I feel calm. My brain feels quiet. And I think that when people see that on their page, it's kind of like a nice, okay, like I see some blues and greens and neutrals, and it just feels like a cozy space you want to like curl up and read a book. Next, I want to come show you our kitchen. Our kitchen, I feel like I made the most changes in, and when people see the befores, I would say they're probably the most shocked by it. So our counters were white, our walls were white, like shiny cement, and then our floors were these large bricks that were, some were crumbled and they were uneven and broken. This window area too, it's a big window, but it goes to an alleyway, so there's not even a ton of natural light, but it's pretty spooky looking, so I made sure to make a moment out of it. So I put these really pretty bamboo shades on it so we still get a little light in, but it's also not just looking out into a creepy alleyway. And this little nook has become a favorite part of mine in our apartment. And I've stacked some cookbooks here. I've added a cutting board, adding a little lamp, I mean, you cannot go wrong. I've got 2 lamps in the kitchen, and the kitchen's about 4 feet. And I love to add a little bit of art, so it's unexpected too. This art is from a garage sale I got in Maryland. A funny story about our wood contact paper. Our super came to fix something, and he was like, oh, you guys got wood counters like no one else in your building does. And I was like, we definitely don't either. I spent many hours doing peel and stick on our floors, here, and the wall, and I think it just softens everything. The walls, I just wanted something that would make it pretty without making such a statement. Because it's a small space, you could lean into a big bold print, but I just didn't want to add any extra chaos. So I went for this really pretty gray print, and it just adds a little bit of softness. So this is a thrifted plate that I got, and this is a fun little hanging basket, I would say, and we keep some wedding save the dates in there. And I think I love to kind of make little moments even in a small space. So in here, I've got I've got art on all the walls, and it's a tiny space, but I wanted it to still pack a punch and still feel like people lived here, even though it's a rental. And I think sometimes people think it's crazy that I do all these things to a rental, but I also think it's crazy to live in a rental and not make it feel like a home just for the sake of it's not permanent. So all of my hacks and tricks are super affordable, and when we leave, this will peel right off. The floor tiles will come right off. You have to make sure you put clear contact paper below it so that way the original floor is not harmed. and that I will make sure I mention. But it's not to say that you can't make a space feel so cozy, even in a rental. So some of this art too this is an IKEA frame with a piece of fabric that I got. I just like the colors. This is from another coffee table book. This is actually a frame that my boyfriend and I got in Ireland. And I just, I think it's so fun to look at things that, again, have sentimental value. And I like adding in pops of blues and greens so it matches the rest of the apartment. So this little cooking moment over here, this gets a lot of airtime online. I'm obsessed with this was a little Target lamp I had, and I switched out the shade for this pretty rattan one. And it just adds so much warmth to it. And this cooking area at night is where I spend the most time, and it's so cute and cozy. And again, I've got art, thrifted frames, and then this is actually another continuation of that print I've got from that corner nook, and it's sliced up again into another piece of art. But it's just, again, it's soft and pretty, but it adds personality to the space. Living in New York in a small 1-bedroom comes with a lot of quirks. One being, this was the fridge that we were given when we moved in. It's a tiny mini fridge, and now it's honestly like a drink fridge for us. We had to buy our own refrigerator, and when I was doing my charcuterie boards, honestly, it worked out just fine. So because we only had the tiny little fridge here, we had to buy our own fridge and freezer, which worked out because I was doing charcuterie boards at the time. So this lives in our hallway. It's an extension of the kitchen, but I didn't want it to feel like such an eyesore. So I put a little basket on top with some cookbooks and a plant, and it just adds some personality. And we keep pictures of us and places we've been, and we'll buy magnets, so it kind of feels, I don't want anything to feel so serious. Like, I want it to feel like it's our home and it's our apartment. So I've got fun, crazy magnets on here. So this is a fun, little additive to our apartment. These were, I think my dad had actually saved some of these for me from fortune cookies, and I just thought they were cute sentiments to have on your way out before you start your day. Good reminders sometimes when you're looking in the mirror. And I just think adding things like that kind of make it feel like people live here and it is a home as opposed to a showroom. I think my absolute favorite renter-friendly hack is all things peel and stick. I've got peel and stick floor tiles, a wallpaper. I've got it on my bookcases. It's such an affordable way to really zhuzh your space up, and you don't have to live with the space that you were given in a renter. You can kind of make it feel soft and cozy. And it's very tedious, and you have to have a lot of patience when you do it, but the outcome is always so nice because you can kind of make it into whatever you want. Like on this bookcase here, I've got peel and stick wallpaper on the back and then contact paper on the top. So it was an all white bookcase that now feels like a little bit more like a library. In our bathroom too, in our kitchen. And I think that peel and stick wallpaper can totally elevate a space. I do think it's fun because it's very affordable, and in a small space like mine, I don't need a lot. I've only needed several rolls for my bathroom or my kitchen, and it's not so crazy, but it does pack a big punch, which is what I love. So we'll just pop into the bathroom really fast on our way to the bedroom. I've got some art here in our hallway. Again, some other clippings that we've seen in other parts from prints that I've kind of sliced up. But I wanted at least this entry when you first walk in. It's a tiny wall, but I still wanted it to pack a punch. And then in our bathroom, I just did some very minor cosmetic things. When you live in a rental in New York, your bathrooms tend to be pretty bleak, and it was all white. Our floors were this like really dark green, which I didn't love. There was nothing wrong with it, I just didn't love it. So I did peel and stick wallpaper on the walls, and then I did on the floor as well. And I added in some art, some thrifted art, some candles, some flowers, some decor, a pretty hand soap dispenser. So that way at least it feels like us, and it feels cozy, and it feels peaceful, and it feels like it's part of the rest of the apartment, and it doesn't feel like this sort of piece that doesn't add up. I wanted it to feel like there was continuity, and I think just adding those quick little things really made a big difference. I think the best way to create and carve out a little slice of peace in the craziness that's Manhattan is finding and making your space feel like you, and making it feel cozy and super layered. So like I love to have lamps everywhere. So at night, the overhead lights are not on. It feels like it's lamp o'clock, it's soft, it's cozy, and I like to see things that I like to look at. So I like to have photos of me and my boyfriend around the apartment. I like to have little things I've collected over time. So it makes it feel personal and to you. And after, you know, a long day and commuting and on the subways, you come home and you're like, okay, this space is mine. And I think that a nice way to do that is layering, and you layer in pieces that spark joy for you somehow. So I've got sentimental pieces layered with books from a thrift store, and at the end of the day I look and I see all these soft surfaces that when you come home from all the cement and the concrete of the city, you come home and it's like a soft place to land. I think that's what makes a home feel super cozy, and that's that Nancy Meyers look. It's that super layered look. It's got blues and greens and neutrals, and it's got floor lamps and table lamps and pillows and blankets and stacks of books, and it just feels like someone lives here as opposed to like a museum. And nothing in my home is so precious that, like, you know, be careful of the rug. Like, it's not like that. I want it to feel lived in, which is what makes a place feel so cozy. And at the end of the day, what I crave to come home and be like, okay, I can decompress and just like veg and read a book or whatever it is. And now I want to show you guys our bedroom. It is teeny tiny. This was the only spot that the bed would work, and it's a full-size bed, and I know that appalls a lot of people, but there was no world in which it would fit any other way. So we weren't able to have a headboard, which I wanted to make up for in other design choices. So this is my latest project. I painted stripes on our walls, which took years off my life, and I'm not joking. I wanted it to feel like a Parisian hotel, and not that I've been to one, but what I would envision it feeling like. And I wanted it to feel soft and cozy. And there's this really pretty Schumacher wallpaper that I love, way out of budget. So I said, let me figure out how I can kind of do it on my own terms. So I did a really light color, and then I had to measure out and do all the taping. And then I did this dark taupe. And I think that the two together look so soft and pretty, and it just adds so much character to the space. Originally, it was all white, and I just didn't like that. And so I painted it blue. So if you'll see on the door and the trim, it's this darkish blue. And I had painted the whole room that. Last year, I did the whole room, including the ceilings, in this blue. And I did the trims and the door and the closet in a high gloss. So it would really feel intentional. And I wanted it to feel like the room was just like drenched in this really rich color, because we don't get a ton of light in here. So I tried to like lean into that. And it honestly, I loved it for the winter months. It felt like a cocoon. But then in the summer, it felt kind of offensive. It was like, oh, it's so pretty and nice out, but you're coming to this cave. So I decided to scratch that, but I loved the blue I had picked, and I wanted to keep some of that. So that's why we've still got some blue in here. And I think that the blue pairs so well with these neutrals because it adds a fun pop, and doing it in a high gloss makes it feel super elevated. And it's all just Benjamin Moore paint and a lot of patience. So I wanted our bed to feel cozy and inviting, but I also love the look of a crisp white hotel room, but I wanted to add a little bit of warmth. So I added in some other materials. So we've got some linens, and I added in this blue quilt, and I've got some grays and whites in here. And I think that adding in extra layers, whether it's pillows, accent pillows, or comforters at the end of your bed, it really makes your space in your bed just feel extra cozy. We don't have a headboard because we don't have space for it. So I wanted to make sure that the pillows felt like they carried a lot of weight visually. And so I also wanted to make sure I did art right above the bed that added some height. So I like that the pillows filled up the space here, and then you've got height in the art that you don't even realize that you don't have a headboard. And I think that doing little things like that are kind of unique to New York, in that you've got to put your bed where you can, and you're gonna have to make some sacrifices, but you can make up for it in other ways with some design choices. So I feel like this is kind of a perfect way of showcasing in a small New York City bedroom. It does not have to be boring, and it can still add a lot of personality. This art above our bed is another DIY moment. I got these frames from Target, and I just liked that it was a big, pretty mat, and then you can choose the frame size. And I wanted it to be small, but again, pack a punch. And it's the same thing. I just did a little watercolor moment. I wanted to add some blue, but I didn't necessarily want it to be the exact same blue as the trim in here. And I love the contrast between the white, the bright blue, and the gold. And I think it's simple, but it's intriguing that it just adds what it needs. It's not too much, it's not too chaotic, but it's not boring. And I think that mixing it with everything else and all the whites, the little bit of blue, is just like such a fun elevated punch to me. So I had this sort of dead space in our bedroom. This is where our desk used to be. And imagine working from home here in an all dark room with no natural light and then dark blue walls. It is just not the most conducive for a work from home environment. And we always need the extra storage. So we got this dresser. It's a Wayfair find. One day I'll upgrade the hardware, but it just fits so perfectly. And I wanted it to have a little height too, so I could sort of make a moment of it. And again, adding in art and personality is like the best way to do it, and it doesn't need to break the bank. So this is another continuation of my craft paper with watercolor series, and it's an IKEA frame. This is another Target frame with another watercolor. It's the scraps from the art above my bed. The one above it is actually something my mom painted too when she was younger. And I just love the blue and I love the sentiment. It's this really pretty oil painting. Like I would pick it up on my own, but even more special that my mom made it. And then the top is actually a postcard. It's a watercolor painted like postcard that my boyfriend and I got when we were at a wedding down in Virginia. And it was a cute old town, and we saw it and we thought the colors fit perfectly and we wanted to get something from there. So I hung it up there. I also got this very, very vintage racket from a thrift store down in Virginia, Luckett's, which I'd mentioned before. It's this like amazing town, and there's just like houses filled with thrifted goodies. And I just saw the racket, thought it was fun, no real meaning behind it, but not everything has to have meaning behind it. And I just think it's kind of unserious in a way, and we play pickleball, so it's kind of a little nod to that. But I just think it also breaks up the bright white IKEA frame, so mixing the new with the old makes it kind of feel cohesive. On the dresser, this felt like it was part of this whole situation. So I got this lamp from Home Sense and this really pretty raffia shade, which I just thought was so pretty and soft and kind of is a nod to my other lamps inside. And then I just lighted a coffee table book, this mannequin I got at a thrift store, my favorite dried hydrangeas, again, no maintenance, and then some more matches. So I think that adding these little vignettes with some personality make this space feel like it's meant to be part of this bigger picture of the room and the apartment, where it was originally a space that I was like, ugh, couldn't figure out what to do with it. And now I love it, which is the same like the nook in my living room. It was a space I originally hated, and now it's my favorite. This dresser was one of the first things we bought too, and we just needed storage. There wasn't much design thought into it, so we just got this big white dresser from Wayfair. And I knew that I needed to add more personality to it, so I thought I could do that on top of it. So again, I love to layer, so I've got stacks of coffee table books, I've got some candles, some flowers, some thrifted pieces. Doing a tray is just the best way to sort of fill the space because I've got my stacks of books and I've got height, but I didn't want to do it again, just like the same as the coffee table. So I went ahead and did a scallop tray for some interest. I've got this really pretty blue speckled ring jewelry tray. I've got some more matches, some more dice, and then I've got a really pretty hurricane candle. And I think that it's just easy enough. It looks pretty. We've got plenty of space for getting ready in the morning, whatever it might be, but it also softens it because the white is so stark. I wanted it to feel like we've got blues and we've got browns and we've got neutrals, but it still feels like it's a part of the rest of the apartment. And another hack I did is these are not even plug-in sconces. I have rechargeable bulbs in them. So they are real hardwired sconces that just aren't hardwired. And I just love the look of them because it just finishes off the dresser for me. I've got the mirror and then I've got these flanking it, and it just is a finishing touch to it. Now this art over here, on the stripes, I love how it looks. This is an IKEA frame with a page out of a coffee table book, classic. A thrifted piece of art in its frame, and then this is actually that Hudson map that I've cut up in a million pieces, but I just love the blue, and I think that the dark blue is nice, A, against the stripes, and B, with the light blue. And I love to stack art. I don't love necessarily one piece on its own. Sometimes you have to, and it makes the most sense, like we've got that above our couch. But when I can, I love to stack 2s and 3s, and especially odd numbers. So this to me just finishes off this wall, because when you walk in, it's the first thing you see. And I didn't want to miss the opportunity to just leave it empty, so kind of went for it. And I think that it just softens this corner in this area, and it just, again, is another place to add some personality and make another moment of it. When I had first painted the bedroom in the all blue, I went for a really high gloss on the closet. I wanted it to feel different from the walls, but I also wanted it to feel totally drenched in color. So the way I could differentiate the two was in its finish. So it honestly is like my favorite part of the room now because of how the color and the finish pop on the walls. I think the blue is so fun with the neutrals. The shine is just, I don't know, it's so fun. And when you add a shine and a high gloss, it makes a space feel super elevated. And again, it's a super easy way to do it. It's just a Benjamin Moore paint, but it just packs a punch. And we could have just left the doors white, but why not paint it blue and high gloss if you can? I think home is without a doubt a feeling that either when you come back to your apartment or you're with friends or with family, it's not so much a physical place as it is a feeling. In our apartment specifically, it just feels like us, and it feels cozy, and it feels warm and inviting, and we like to have friends over for Sunday football, and it feels just like a gathering place, which I love. And it's not so much that where our apartment actually sits, it's sort of how we've created it, and it's not a vibe, but it's more just the feeling of it is what I always identify home as.
Hi Homeworthy, I am Nisozi Kakembo. Welcome to my home in Maryland. Come on in, I cannot wait to show you around today.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, my name is Nisozi Kakembo. I am an author and creative director of XN Studio, a home decor brand that partners with artisans throughout Africa to create ethically sourced and meaningful home decor goods. We are at my home in Silver Spring, Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C. I actually grew up around the corner from this rental home, and I never anticipated or planned on being back in this area. But as life would have it, my son got into a really great high school program close by, so we packed our home, packed our bags, and moved about 10 minutes away from his high school. And so because I knew at the time that this was going to be like a 2 to 3, maybe 4-year home, depending on what we decided to do once he got his driver's license, around the age of 16, which is knocking on our doorstep now. I wanted a home that felt good because home is my profession and my vocation, but I didn't know really how to invest in a temporary space, making it feel my own without spending too much money. So that was the welcome challenge that I had when finding this home. And really, I feel like I can convert almost any space aesthetically into something that works for me and my family, but having a layout that works for us is something that I really prioritize and value even over the aesthetics of a home. You can always change the aesthetics, but you can't always change the layout. So especially in the suburbs, a lot of homes are cookie cutter, a lot of homes are replicas of one another in terms of the floor plan. But this one I found had a really unique floor plan. It's an end unit townhome. There are some really lovely ceilings. We have lovely skylights. There are a few different level changes, and I found all of that really exciting and accommodating to the way that we live our lives in a home and the way that I wanted to decorate the home. So when I came in, it was like totally a blank slate, and I love that also. And I knew kind of right away what some of the primary changes that I would make to the home were, namely door levers, light fixtures, and then layering on from there in my own DIY and renter-friendly aesthetic. There are also a lot of heirlooms and hand-me-downs from my family and my mother and different aunts. Most of my artwork is made from family. I have really a set of prolific aunts in my life, artistically prolific aunts and family members in my life. So it's a mixture of art that they've produced, art that I've been inspired to create, as well as hand-me-down. Some of these textiles are vintage. They go back 50, 60 years and more. And then the newer textiles that I've created. So welcome to my living room. This is right off of the foyer and also one of the first places that you see when you walk into my home. So I wanted to make it a very welcoming and warm space off the bat. This is how we're living. This is what you're walking into. So I've somewhat replicated this vignette from my previous home. That's also one of my renter hacks. You don't have to start completely from scratch. You can really somewhat copy and paste different aspects or vignettes of your previous home into the space that you're moving into if you have a similar palette or space that you can make that transition onto. So in this case, this is a console that I got from Article during the pandemic. We did some partnership work together. And the reason that I love it beyond what it looks like and fits my aesthetic is that it allows me to store all kinds of stuff in here. So I have candles in here. I think I have just miscellaneous artwork. I'm often switching out and updating artwork throughout my home. There are board games in another one. So you can really just tuck away all of your kind of everyday or seasonal things in a space and set it and forget it, but then have it look good. So this is large. It accommodates all of our little knickknacks. I think we store batteries and light bulbs in another. So it really works well for that purpose. And then I accented it with this Sinufu stool. And this is made in Ivory Coast by Abu, who is in my book. He's a wood sculptor in Ivory Coast. And I got a few different pieces from him during the course of our interview phase for the book research. This is a piece of Kuba cloth. Kuba cloth is made in DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. And I actually got this piece in Marrakesh during my book research in June of 2022. Although I do not know who the artisan is, but I did buy it from an artisan vendor in the market. And again, Kuba cloth is featured in my book. These are pieces that I've also wanted to explore more and learn more about. So in my book, I do have an entire section dedicated to the production of Kuba cloth and profiling experts who produce this in DRC. And then you have my book. I keep referencing my book, The African Decor Edit. And I wanted to be able to honor it in a special way beyond putting it kind of on just a prop, something that could prop it up, or laying it around on a book table, on a coffee table, which is still adequate. But I splurged and bought this beautiful book stand by Virginia Sin. And it allows me to prop the book up. I can open it to a page or various pages. And the photography in the book is also its very own special moment. So when I open it up, I also feel like I'm displaying photography in my home. So that is the dedicated space for my book, The African Decor Edit. And then if we come up over here, again, another piece that I got on the road during my book research. This is a large blanket. If I open it up, it's massive, so I'll keep it folded for now. And this is from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, in the textile designated area of the capital called Shiromeda. And that is also where I conducted my book research for a specific section on Ethiopian textiles. And this pillow is one of my newer experiments in items. This is indigo from Mali. And this is baule from Ivory Coast, from Cote d'Ivoire. And again, the artisans who create this textile are featured in my book as well. So we get to understand how they produce it, where the cotton comes from, the weaving technique, etc. And so this is a combination of both of those styles. And last but not least, on this corner of the living room, we have a feathered juju hat. What's really exciting about these is that they are actually hats. So they're worn like this. They come from Cameroon, from Western Cameroon, and they're worn with an entire beautiful ensemble during special ceremonies there. And if we swing over to what I like to call my library, but it's just a wall of books, many of which, I've been collecting over years from, high school. Many of them are from college, some are from grad school work. But my most recent and I think most cherished possessions are books that were written by friends and other designers and cookbook authors who I've gotten to know just over the past, 5 to 10 years. And especially during the period of me studying, how books are made and really dissecting and wanting to know more about how this all comes together. So that's essentially what I have showcased here. This is also a calabash from, I believe this is from Ghana. I took this from my brother, Lamine, many years ago. It's actually from Ghana or Brazil. I know those are very different places you would think, but there is a significant symbiosis between the two, given the transatlantic slave trade, and he has spent significant periods of time in both places. This was actually a pulley that is used during weaving, and this originates in Liberia. I bought this in Ghana at the same time I bought the Dogon Mali window shutter. And what I love so much about this piece and what the vendor told me at the time is that in those days, these faces were carved in a way that reflected and resembled the physical features and the facial features of certain tribes from throughout West Africa and pre-colonial West Africa in particular. So these were utilized as passports. You would carry this with you if you were going into another region or going into another kingdom, and you would show them this and they would know where you came from. This would validate and confirm what your origin is, and then you would be allowed entry into that region. And I also love that it's Liberian because my eldest brother, Craig, is half Liberian. So this is also, pays homage to that side of my family as well. So this is one of the pieces that I mentioned is produced by one of my aunts. This is made by my aunt Renee C. Neblet. She is based in Ghana, in Kokrobite, and she's also featured extensively throughout my book. She has a beautiful home there, as well as an art institute called the Kokrobite Institute. But she produced this piece of art called Everybody is Talking. I actually don't know the year, but I'm assuming it was the 70s or the 80s when she was really focused on this artistic style. And so this is a piece that she gave to my mother and my mother gave to me. It's also beautifully matted and framed, and it belongs to me now. This is my somewhat new to me coffee table. It was a Facebook marketplace find. And I got it a few months before my book came out. I figured I have a coffee table book coming out. I should probably get a coffee table I originally got rid of our coffee table when my son was learning how to walk, which was almost 15 years ago, and just hadn't gotten around to getting another one. So I really love this. It kind of goes with the vintage, modern aesthetic of my home. And I love that it's clear, so it doesn't obstruct visual space, and you can still see my prized Moroccan rug beneath it. This is the rug that I got in Morocco in 2022. And so on the table, we have, again, various books from friends. This is by my friend Michael July. We were friends in Brooklyn. I think he's in Atlanta now. Feels, looking back now, kind of like a yearbook of Brooklyn. I have so many friends who are featured in the book. That was from the mid 2005 or so region, and it really captures a moment in time from when I was living in Brooklyn. And this is a classic, a true classic, that my mother passed down to my son and I. We both have dreads, and it just shows the beauty and diversity of having dreadlocks. And this is also from my mother. This is an Endop stool, a miniature stool from Nigeria. And if you notice, it's a little bit wobbly, and I always tell customers and clients who are asking and inquiring about, authenticity of different African-made products and objects, and there's always going to be a variation in an artisan and in a handmade object, and that's really what brings it to life and distinguishes it from something that's mass-produced or machine made. And so, it's not even, and that's what I love about it. And if it's really that serious, you can prop something up underneath, which I have had to do with another stool that I utilize in a more utilitarian purpose, but visually, I love that it's a bit quirky. So in terms of the visual aesthetic, I kind of mix it up depending on the room. This is a larger home, and I didn't feel wed to or committed to needing the home to be completely visually homogeneous or the same. So when you walk into my living room, it's a little bit more neutral. That's by virtue of my sofa. I love leather. I love natural materials. I got a really great rug, a few really great rugs when I was in Morocco on my book research in 2022. And I waited a very long time for my son to get old enough for us to be able to have a light colored rug. So I got like the most ivory rug I could find in the market in Marrakesh. So that is the centerpiece of our living room, and the neutral tones unfold from there. And I do accent that with bright artwork. That's really one of my design staples when I'm working in a neutral space or when I'm in a neutral mood. I still incorporate moments and bursts of color through artwork and home decor accents, so namely pillows and other textiles. This is my entry. We are a few steps up from the front door, and one of the first things that greets you when you come into my home is a very strategically placed wood-carved chest that my mother gave me, that she obtained close to 30 years ago or so when she was managing the African Art Gallery in Georgetown, Washington, D.C. It's sculpted by a famous woodcarver called Lamidi Fakei, and he is a renowned sculptor from Nigeria, and specifically from the Yoruba tribe in Nigeria. And these are very traditional Yoruba carvings. You can see some of the motifs here that actually carry out throughout various other textiles and African art and objects. It's one of the most popular designs that you'll find, and the specific features and features on the objects and the subjects within the chest are very specific to this style of Yoruban art carving and wood carving. So this is a piece from my mother, and it holds a lot of familial value for that reason. It's been in the family for quite some time. And then to my left here, I have a carving from Mali, from the Dogon region of Mali. And this was not a hand-me-down. This was a piece that I got when I was doing my book travels and research in Ghana in March of 2023. And this is from an artisan market in Ghana. And these are actually, they come in different sizes. This is one of the smaller sizes that I could fit in my suitcase. And this was a door shutter, and they're used on homes and granaries in the Dogon region of Mali. And so this is also a hand-carved object, and it showcases people from that area doing, different daily activities. There's also local animal life that you see here. There's an alligator, and this is the very cool shutter lever. So there are several different elements on that I really wanted to be able to bring back. The doors are probably, larger than our standard door, super beautiful, very heavy, and unfortunately there's no way that I could bring them back here. So this is a memento and a nod to that wood carving tradition from Mali, West Africa as well. So here just below the Dogon shutter, we have a collection, kind of a motley collection of different objects and art that I picked up along the way. This is a vintage kind of antique vase from a second-hand shop, and I'd love to have a moment of a fresh flower here. This flower, actually both of these, eucalyptus and this one, I don't know the name. I got them last week in Los Angeles. I was there for my book tour, and I did a flower run in central LA, and I've had this habit of trying to preserve my book tour flowers for as long as possible. Some of them I've been able to dry, and they're also around the home, but these are still relatively fresh. I was in Los Angeles a week ago, so they're still going strong, and I want to be able to display them for as long as possible, and they will always remind me of my book tour. This is a watercolor / drawing that my cousin actually got custom made for me. It's from a photograph taken the night of my New York launch, which was on October 1st. And that was in Soho, Manhattan. And this was right after the event concluded, and we went out to get some fun shots in the street. And it was a whirly dress, kind of a flapper style dress made by Andrea Iyama, and I partnered with Industry Africa for my clothing and jewelry for my New York launch. And so this also captures that moment from my book tour. This is a postcard from one of my favorite restaurants in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg. It's called Colette. And this is another postcard that I got when I was in Paris a few summers ago. And I don't really know the story. I'd never seen this painting before, this drawing before, but I went into the gift shop, and there were very few objects and souvenirs that reflected Black people and Black art in the gift shop, and even more largely throughout the Louvre. And yeah, so I bought this. I pretty much bought everything that I could find that had a Black person on it, because I wanted to, represent and show that these objects are in demand. This art is in demand, and I found the artwork beautiful. So I wanted to place it in a very prominent place in my home. And then this is a soapstone sculpture from Uganda, and these are available in my web shop, XN Studio, and I call it Tulinawe, and Tulinawe is the Luganda word for together. And so it's a continuous sculpted piece, and to me that represents togetherness. So I dubbed it Tulinawe in honor of what it looks like aesthetically, and also to be able to incorporate some of the Luganda language into my products. The powder room, there were a few updates that I made here. First and foremost, the door lever. All of the door levers in my home initially were doorknobs, like the brassy kind of doorknobs that come pretty standard in 1990s townhomes. And so the updates that I made in here were, I had remnants of this wallpaper that I've had for probably close to 8 years. And these were leftovers after I installed wallpaper in the foyer of my previous home. And obviously, the seams don't match, but I think that adds to the quirky nature of it. You don't always, if you have remnants, I would much rather do this and utilize something that has a special meaning to me, that I still like visually. And it was a small space and a fun space. So I figured, there could be worse things than seams that don't match. So I think that's actually a bit of decor advice from me to you. Don't be afraid to install mismatched seams wallpaper. And beyond that, I've also utilized this indigo textile from Mali as a hand towel, and it's super absorbent. I actually have these at various places throughout my home. I use them as towels when I travel because they roll up very small and they are super absorbent. So they're easy to travel with. I take them with me when I travel. I use them in my home as hand towels. I take them to the beach. You'll probably always find me with one in some capacity. And then the other small update that I made in here is switching out the faucet fixture. That was a super easy update as well. I did that on my own DIY. And that's the powder room. The best compliment that somebody could give me about my home, and that I often get about my home, is that it feels very warm in here. The other day, there was somebody from a utility company, and he came in and he was like, "Whoa, this feels really warm. Like, are you a designer?" You must. And I was like, "Yeah, I am. I am a designer." But to hear that from complete strangers, and I know that this is actually not his aesthetic, but there was still something about it that felt warm and familiar to him. And I think that's what textiles can do. That's what art can do. That's what photos of family can do. So regardless of your background or where you come from or what your actual aesthetic preference is, there are common elements that signal this is a home. Somebody has taken time to put this together to curate a space that is welcoming. So that's really the best compliment I could receive and do receive when I have friends and family and utility guys over my home. I don't know so much that I have a design mantra, but the mantra and the tagline behind Exen Studio is lifestyle without borders. And so that's the way I think about my design. That's really what my design indicates and signals to me, because I've noticed different aesthetics, different patterns that are present and are popular and have existed in various parts of the culture, either independently or somewhat intertwined for centuries. And so design doesn't respect borders. Design doesn't adhere to borders. Design does not know borders. And I think that there's something inherently beautiful about that dialogue that is supra, a geopolitical construct. And that is also why I design, and that's also what inspires me to create and to work with people across borders. So welcome to my dining room transitional area. On the left here, we have a painting that I created. So this piece was inspired by a painting that I saw in the background of Lawrence's apartment in Insecure. And it was a slightly smaller painting. It was more vertically oriented, but I looked at it, I loved it. I remember taking, pictures of the painting on the television, and then running out to get all of the materials to get the canvas. And I believe I already had the paint. And this was the piece that I produced from it, and I'm constantly getting inquiries when people see it on social media or something, but I don't actually fashion myself as a painter. So I have not made them available beyond my own private collection at home, but I love that it reminds me of that TV show, Insecure, and how you can also find inspiration and creative inspiration around you all the time, including on television. So swinging around to one of the nooks in my dining room, this is an area where I've actually sat here, similar to the mudcloth butterfly chair in my living room. This is an indigo butterfly chair, and it's a really comfortable place at times when I've had really, hectic work days. I often work at my dining room table, so sitting here kind of lets me release a little bit. I might have a small table on the side, and I'm just writing some emails from here, and it really creates a nice transition space from what my dining room has become, which is my office. Although I have an office, but there's something about working at the dining table. These are also a collection of pieces. Again, another Bolga fan This one I got at an international African Arts Festival in Brooklyn, probably a decade or so ago. I don't remember exactly. These are photographs that I took of, this is the Gaddafi Mosque in Kampala, which is just outside of my aunt's apartment in Kampala, in Old Kampala. And this is some of the beautiful breeze block in her apartment building that I found really gorgeous. And I actually took those photos in, I believe, 2007 when I was in Uganda doing thesis research for my graduate thesis. This is a picture that a painting that my son made when he was in 2nd or 3rd grade, and it was selected to be on display in the mall. And we're all very proud of it. It was made from etched in styrofoam and rolling on different paint colors. So there's a purple one too somewhere as well. This is a hat, I believe also from Mali, that I somewhat borrowed 16 years ago from a family member who was moving from Brooklyn to Oakland. And my son was a toddler then, and they put the hat on his head and sent me a picture. I was at work and I was like, oh my gosh, we have to keep that. That is super cute on him. And so I've integrated it into my decor as well. And so as you can see here, I love mixing objects with paintings and art and pictures on a gallery wall. Gallery walls don't just have to be a uniform picture, 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 painting, painting, painting. You can really mix it up by adding different objects in addition to switching up the orientation. This gallery wall starts low, or it stretches more vertically than it does horizontally. And this was the first time that I did this, and that's really just what the space dictated to me. I didn't know really what to do with the space at first. Was I going to put something big here? But this was the first piece that I put up and just built out from there based on things that I was finding. So it has developed very organically. And here we have an Ethiopian Coptic cross that was gifted to me by a family member who visited in 2011 or so. So this has also been in the family for some time. We have another wood carved piece from the same Yoruba artist who carved the chest in the front. And this serves, as you can see here, as an elevated plant stand. I really revere my plants. I know that, there are maybe other, better, more prestigious ways of showcasing this artisan and this sculptor's work, but my plants mean everything to me. So this is not a downgrade. I also have photographs and works here by friends and also images, pictures that I took myself over the years. This was a beautiful block in Brooklyn where I used to live, and I snapped this picture in 2013. I just loved the juxtaposition of the different bright colored doors and then the bicycle outside. It all felt very Brooklyn to me. So I wanted to frame that to remember that portion of my life spent in Brooklyn. This is a picture from Cameroon. Actually snapped this in the car, driving by really quickly, and saw this beautiful gaggle of school children headed home from school one day, and just really loved that scene and wanted to also keep that and incorporate that once I got back home. So this is my dining room table, AKA my desk. I work here a lot, and it was one of the first spaces that I had mocked up in Photoshop before moving in. I knew that this was exactly the space that this table was going to go. I knew that I wanted to change out the light fixture immediately, and I knew that I wanted to add a ceiling medallion. So those were some of the first things that I did when I moved into the home and really created the dining room table as a focal point, really just, extending from this update in DIY as well. And this is a mudcloth table runner. Here, again, mudcloth is from Mali, West Africa. And I pointed the table with different upholstery as well. So this is also a mudcloth piece. This is a piece from my mother. It was part of a much larger piece and is actually still a lot more at her home, but I snagged a few pieces to upholster these Cheska chairs. And this is, again, a Kuba cloth. This is another form, a low-cut pile Kuba cloth from the same style that I have hanging above my media console in the living room. And this is just a different variety of that. So I use that to accent my these other chairs in the dining room. So one of the best things about African textiles, again, is that they go with so many different styles and patterns. And one great example is the fact that I then, on my kitchen island, have this very frilly lace kind of cafe curtain, DIY cafe curtain, that I was inspired to create after, again, my visit to Paris. And what I love so much about Parisian decor is that it does blend and mix between these two traditional styles. This is traditional Parisian and this is traditional Congolese, but again, they work together because they're steeped in some larger and more traditional meaning. And so what inspired me also from a utilitarian standpoint to put some visual block here is coming down the stairs and seeing this, without any obstruction. You just see all of my junk under the kitchen island. And so I was trying to figure out, like, how can I hide this in an aesthetically pleasing way? And I was at IKEA and stumbled upon these really cool, this is actually a pot rail, and the size ended up perfect. So this is an IKEA island. I got it off of Facebook Marketplace, and then I went to IKEA and bought these pot rails, and I already had this lace curtain that I utilized in one of my closets in my previous home, and I cut it in half and had enough to use around the entire island. So it creates this really fun kind of Parisian cafe moment in my otherwise very modern African home aesthetic. And again, alluding to the different ways that I spruced up the home. When I installed this peel and stick brick wallpaper, I remember as soon as it was done and I stepped back, I felt so good because it really grounded the space, which prior to installing it felt very kind of voluminous to me and felt overwhelming. And I didn't install this until I think July or August. So I'd already been in the home for some time. But again, I wanted to take my time to really figure out what worked for me here. And I did the whole Photoshop thing, and it looked good on Photoshop, but you don't always know what it will look like in person. So I was really pleased with how this turned out. And every now and again, like, somebody can tell, but they're like, it's fine. It's fine that it's not real. Those are mostly like my Brooklyn friends who have real brick in their homes. But for those of us who don't have that, we're like none the wiser, and it's convincing. So over here we have a music station, which can somewhat be misleading because none of us in the home are actually musicians. My son is a great musician, but he didn't really like stick toward the piano. He's also really great at the drums. But this was a keyboard that my father passed down to my son. And whenever I host, actually, when I'm hosting gatherings and my family is here, my dad, who's an amazing pianist, he assumes his position and provides entertainment and music for the evening. So I keep this here for him. And then we also have a piano bench, which I created, which I designed. It's a mixture, again, between this modern aesthetic and mud cloth, and I use more industrial feel, these legs for the bench as well. So it's a combination of modern and traditional, and then bringing them together for a utilitarian purpose at our music station. And above said music station, another piece by my aunt Renee Neblett. This one is called A Tear for Biko, and she produced this in 1984. And Stephen Biko was an anti-apartheid activist in South Africa who was killed and sacrificed his life for the movement and the anti-apartheid movement and liberation in the 80s. So this is also a very important piece, both in terms of its significance and also visually. The kitchen is very stark to me, and it was a newly renovated kitchen when I moved in. If I were renovating it, I would do something a bit different, but it's beautifully done, it's well done, but it's not so much visually to my liking. And I wanted, again, to make it warmer, to ground the aesthetic, ground the visual experience in the kitchen. So I did that by adding an apron and having that on display rather than tucking it away. I have this vintage Persian rug that my mother gave me, and also utilizing, I removed one of the cabinet doors here and created an open shelving concept, an open shelving space, which also brought down some of the visual monotony of having just this blank wall of white cabinets and gray subway tiles. So in it, I've added special pieces. These are coffee mugs from my friend Zelika's wedding many years ago. These are traditional Buna coffee cups, and then some other important stemware and meaningful stemware and glassware. One of my best friends' cookbooks by Hawa Hassan in Bibi's Kitchen. She's a James Beard Award winner. And then also another variety of cookbooks by friends as well. My friend Keanu, and then Alexander Smalls and Nina Duro. These are both new books, cookbooks that came out. Add them to your guest list or your gifting list for this holiday season and thank me later. So my career path, it was/is a bit meandering. I've always been surrounded by eclectic, creative women and men, but in particular the women in my life, starting with my mother and the group of aunties that raised me and raised me and my brothers together in Washington, D.C. area, and also a little bit in Europe. My parents met in Germany, and so they relocated to the Washington, D.C. area because my father got into Howard University Medical School, and so they left Germany and set up a new life here. And my parents are both entrepreneurial. Like I said, my father studied medicine, but he went on to establish his own medical clinic, family practice. And he started that from the ground up and ran that himself for the greater part of my life. And my mother worked in promoting African art, artists, and fashion here in the Washington, D.C. area, plugging primarily into the ambassador groups that live here and the women and the wives of ambassadors and female ambassadors, and using that as a channel to gain further exposure for African artists who were coming here for the first time or trying to really get a foothold in the African market. And so, you know, me as a little kid going to fashion shows with my mother, going to expos and expositions with my mother in Washington, D.C. at the convention center, that was how I grew up. If there was, you know, a day where school was closed for whatever reason, I would be at the African Art Gallery in Georgetown, Washington, D.C. that she managed, which is also where and how I came across and now have a lot of the art in my home. There are pieces that she collected during that time frame, which now have been passed on to me. And that was really kind of what I grew up around and established as the baseline of what's normal. Women and my family members creating their own way where there wasn't a way, or where there was not exactly an idea or a concept or an opportunity that fit what their ambitions. They created that way. They created that path and blazed a trail for the likes of me. And so fast forward many, many years, I got into architecture. I pursued architecture and art history in school, pivoted a little bit to human rights and social justice through my urban planning studies in graduate school at Columbia, and then worked in human rights for many years, human rights and social justice philanthropy for many years after that in New York City, all the while really missing my creative outlet. So once I got an opportunity to decide what I wanted to do for myself, I pursued human rights, and I actually realized a few years into that career that there is and can be a bridge between the arts, culture, and social justice and human rights. So XN Studio is a home decor brand, but it is also an advocacy tool and an incubator for economic development, women's empowerment, and cultural and historic preservation of African culture and art and histories throughout the continent of Africa. So the most recent and ambitious project that I've taken on in that, I guess, 13-year time span, I founded Exen Studio in 2011. And a few weeks ago, last month, I published my first book that really encapsulates the essence of what Exen Studio has pursued in terms of storytelling and profiling the lives of artisans throughout Africa through the lens of the work that they produce, through the lens of their textiles, through the lens of their wooden sculptures, etc. And in that project, I interview 16 artisans throughout 9 countries in Africa, and then showcase 10 homes ranging from Los Angeles to Berlin to Accra that demonstrate in elevated and meaningful ways and creative ways of incorporating African decor into various lifestyles and homes. So come with me now upstairs. I will take you to my bedroom. So welcome to my primary bedroom, my primary suite, as I like to call it. This is where a lot more layering action happens with textiles and baskets and a new fun light fixture that is a new addition to my collection for Exen Studio, and pretty much inspired by, again, my book research. I worked a lot and researched a lot of objects created and made by raffia. And I just went crazy with it when I got home and started looking around to see, well, what can I design with this myself? I was really inspired by the artisan stories and creations while I was on the road in a way that I hadn't necessarily been when I was a little bit more removed from the production. So this is one of my favorite things ever, especially given my very high ceiling. My cathedral ceiling here had really been trying to figure out how to, again, ground the space. I like cozy, small spaces. And so this light fixture really achieves that, helps me achieve, again, a warmer space, a more grounded space, and it makes the space feel less humongous to me. This is another Ashoke textile, and this was given to me by my best friend, whose mother-in-law gave it to her directly from Nigeria. Her mother-in-law is Yoruba, and that, again, those are the people who specialize in this type of textile. So her mother-in-law knows that I love African textiles, and so she gave this to my best friend to then give to me. And this is folded in half. It's also a very large textile, so it serves as a really lovely and stylish coverlet as well. And here I've added a mixture of mud cloth. Well, this is mud cloth, again, with my favorite raffia. This is an indigo pillow that I've had for, again, 10 or 15 years. And this is a batik pillow, and I also share and go into depth on this process in the book as well, with a batik artisan named Angie in Ghana. And she's actually the one who taught me how to batik during an artist residency there in 2018. These are all baskets from Zambia. These are Tonga baskets, and I got these baskets, again, during my book research and travels, and there is a Tonga basket artisan in the book as well. And this really beautiful brass lamp is from my mother. I believe she got it at the Georgetown Flea. So this is probably 30 years old, probably at least 30 years old. So in this nook here, we have, again, another juju hat from Cameroon, and also a new wallpaper that I've added to the collection called the Sheena wallpaper. And it is inspired by a Kuba cloth design. And so these are traditional motifs and designs that derive from this specific textile tradition. And I was able to adapt that into a wallpaper format. And again, this wall took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do with aesthetically. I tried various different wallpapers in Photoshop. And ultimately, when I designed this for the new collection and rendered it in Photoshop, it transformed the space instantly and took my breath away. So I'm super happy with how it turned out. I'm glad that I waited. And yeah, this is inspired by Kuba cloth as well. And then down here, these are some more textiles from my mother. This is a mud cloth as well. And this is a newer design, a newer style. This is not from my mother, but this was one that she was gifted and she ultimately gifted me. And so I use it just to spruce up this corner as well. And then a couple points over here as well. This is a Senegalese basket where I'm able to store blankets and pillows when they're in or out of season. And I got this at the Brooklyn Flea many years ago. And then over here, again, utilizing beautiful wood sculpted African furniture and objects as plant stands. And so this is a Bamileke stool from Cameroon. And again, I was able to interview the artisan who makes that. His name is Honoré, and he's in Western Cameroon. And funny story, I mean, you look at the size here, and somehow I was able to fit it in my suitcase. Coming back, in addition to like 12 shields, I don't know how we managed to do that, but by the time me and 5 grown adults were sitting and maneuvering with my luggage, we were all sweating, but we got the stool to fit into my luggage. So that's the funny story behind that. So this is one of 3 rugs that I brought back from Morocco. Unlike the Bamileke stool, which I crammed into my luggage, I had the sense to ship these back from Morocco. So I worked with the vendor and we bundled them up and shipped them via DHL. And it gave me something to look forward to coming home from. I definitely didn't want to leave my travels. I had a spectacular 2.5 months in Africa for the research, but I was excited to come home to my Moroccan rugs, and this was one of them. And it works perfectly in my bedroom. I tried it out in the living room for a while, but again, I really wanted to have that ivory moment in the living room. So I saved this piece for my bedroom. So my primary bathroom has been one of the biggest challenges and most rewarding spaces in the home so far. It was a completely blank white slate when I moved in, and again, in wanting to ground the various spaces in the home, I really had to sit and brainstorm on this space for a while. There's a massive skylight which floods the bathroom with light in addition to the cathedral ceiling. So it's a very large space. So trying to figure out what I could do here that wasn't a full renovation and that was renter friendly was really a challenge. And the first thing that I did, obviously, was layer the space with some of my textiles and baskets. So these are 2 Ugandan baskets that are also in my collection and made by artisans in the book, made by Raffia. You know, I love Raffia. And so this was a moment also in a vignette that I borrowed from my previous home. And I spoke to the wood-like wallpaper, and this is it. This is not real wood. I know it's hard to believe, but again, experimented with several different wallpapers on this wall through Photoshop, thankfully, and it took me a while to actually realize or to think about adding the wallpaper in a wood-like design here on this wall. But as soon as I did it, I was like, this is the wallpaper, this is the one. So this is, again, going all the way up. It makes it feel, it grounds and warms up the space in a way that I wasn't able to achieve by just leaving it blank. And it's also very much in keeping with my minimalist aesthetic. And then if we zoom down to the floors quickly, this is really what ultimately transformed after all was said and done. I still needed to, and felt like I needed to do something with the floor. And this was the one piece that actually is not so renter friendly because these are peel and stick, but they are permanent. They're not gonna come up without leaving the adhesive. So I rendered the space very beautifully in Photoshop and emailed my landlord, and I was like, pretty please, can I do this? And he already knows that I'm a designer. So I think he was just like waiting for the day to come. And he loved the idea, he loved the concept, and he gave me the green light. So as soon as I did this, again, very much inspired by my Parisian mixture and hodgepodge of design and travels, this really made the space pop, and it really elevated the space into a sophisticated bathroom and like spa-like experience, if you will. So this was the last thing the last design element that I added to the bathroom, and it really changed it for me, and I love spending time in here now. I do source a lot of my objects, again, from vintage spaces, from flea markets. And this is a piece from one of my textile vendors. His name is Diop, and he sets up at the Chelsea market, I think every Saturday and Sunday. He's still working there. And this piece is, again, about 10 years old. And these are made in Ghana, and they're used as kind of like billboards or advertisements for barbershops and hair salons. And there's a whole, prolific tradition behind these, which are painted, painted on wood. So they're really beautiful, and I was finally able to save my money and get my hands on one some years ago. So I have, very special pieces, and another piece of advice that I have for anybody looking to decorate their home with special pieces that you're purchasing is sometimes you do have to save money for it. Really quality and meaningful work is not always going to come at a cheap price, but when I have my mind set on something and my visual eye set on something, I know that I'm gonna just begin kind of creating a little fund. So that was even the same for my first juju hat, who I also got from Diop in Chelsea Market. And it was only $150, but at that time, that was a lot of money for me. So it probably took me like a year to save up the money, because I was also saving up money to buy a home. But when I purchased the home, I had my little fund for my juju hat, and I let Diop know, and it made it even that much more special for me. So there's, again, a mixture of artwork that I've purchased from others, that I've saved my money for, and artwork that I create as a not artist. This was originally, this black and gold diptych was originally a triptych. There's a piece in the center, and it was above my dining room and my old home. But I've used it at various points. I've used it in gallery walls and flanking different gallery walls. I don't actually remember or know what I did with the centerpiece, but in the meantime, it acts kind of as an interior shutter. It gives like a shutter experience. And this was a piece that I made going into one of my birthdays, where I wanted to create. I was in a very, again, artistically creative space. So that's gold spray paint and black paint, and I freehanded the whole thing. So that was a fun piece. And then this is a combination of the batik, which you saw on my pillow, on one of the pillows on my bed. And then I love cobalt blue, so I add it, or like Frida Kahlo blue. So I add it really into as many elements and design as I can. I also do a fun flower pot or planter with that same color, and adobe. I love the combination of primary bold colors and neutral colors. So this brings those two aesthetics together. So believe it or not, this vanity was also stark creamy white when I moved in. And this started out as leftover wallpaper from my son's bedroom, who wanted an all black room, and his room in our previous home was all black. So I wanted to bring that in for him so that he could also feel like this was his home as well. So this was leftover. I was grappling with what to do with this vanity. It was all white cream, and there were, it was kind of peeling. It wasn't in good condition. So I tried out the peel and stick on here, and it's thin enough as to where I was able to wrap it around the door. So if you think about, wrapping a box for a gift or something, that was my approach to the door, and to the vanity. So it took about, maybe half a day or so. And this was one of the first achievements in, again, grounding the space. It draws the eye down, and it makes the space feel cozier and warmer. And so this gives us another uncanny DIY in the primary bathroom. The word home to me means refuge and respite. There's nothing that I love more than coming home after a long trip and just plopping down on my sofa, or having coffee at my kitchen island. I really just love to feel embraced here and to feel like this is the safe space for me and my son that I've worked really hard to create. And that's what home means to me, is refuge and safety. Homeworthy, it's been real. I've had a lot of fun having you over today, but I've got to get to work, so you don't got to go home, but you got to get out of here. See you next time. Bye.
Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Charu. Welcome to my home in Barnes. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, I'm Charu Gandhi, and I am the founder of Elysian, and you're here with me today in my home in Barnes. In the summer of 2023, we decided that we were going to move south of the river. We have lived in Chelsea before this for, well, pretty much the last 20 years. And we wanted to move south of the river to Barnes to be closer to our son's school, which is by Richmond Park, not far from here. And we needed more space. We had our daughter in early 2023, and so we were a little bit squeezed in our Chelsea flat. And we looked for several months, and this house popped up. It had been reduced in price. It's a rental. And I decided to drive down. I actually don't know this part of London well, or didn't. And I remember the day I sort of drove through this grid of streets and thought, ooh, these are nice houses, and parked outside the house. And the estate agent was waiting for me inside. I stepped in and I had a quick look downstairs, and I'll tell you a bit more about what the downstairs looked like. And then I asked to go upstairs. The house has 3 and a bit floors. And he was incredulous. He said, "Are you sure you want to go upstairs?" I said, "Yes, why?" And he said, "You're the first person who's visited who's asked to go beyond the ground floor." So that tells you something about what the house looked like on the inside. I did see all of the house and thought, oh, I think I can do something pretty special with it. The outside of the house is really beautiful. It's got a long facade, so it's quite a flat house. It's long and doesn't have that much depth, which means that every room has a large window or set of windows, and it has the most magical garden at the back, south facing. And although it was a cold, late October, early November day, I could see what this house could be. And so we made an offer, it got accepted, and our rental commenced in February 2024. So we've been here just over a year, 14 months. And have been slowly sort of building it up into the home that we want it to be. So we are in the front room, or the reception room. I like to call it the yellow room. When we took on this house, this was a very drab shade of sort of grey white. And I wanted to lift this room and fill it with color. And so I decided to paint it. It's a color called jaune indienne. You'll see through the tour of the house that weirdly, I guess subliminally, lots of Indian themed paint colors, which is my heritage. So it's an Indian yellow by Argile, and intentionally decided to leave the sort of detail in the white to sort of break up the room and break up the space. And I wanted this room to feel warm, lifted, sort of full of color, but quite gallery-esque. So I did think about the art placement quite early on. I bought this Nonunzo Gueca piece many years ago and knew that it would sit atop this fireplace and be quite central to the room. The room is grounded by this beautiful bespoke rug by Holland and Cassidy that I worked with them to design. And what the rug celebrates and why it's intentionally tonal is I find different weaves in rug making and carpet making really interesting. And so I wanted a rug that celebrated or brought that craft to the forefront. So there's 4 different weave techniques in this rug. I intentionally didn't want it to be a rectangle or a circle. So it has these sort of chamfered corners and sort of feels a little bit, not unfinished, but cut off at the edges. But then I wanted to create a strong graphic element. So hence these sort of stripes of the burgundy, which I'm actually matching, burgundy through the rug. And so I find that this rug fills the space and grounds the room. It does also, which is another tip for a rental, if there's something you don't like, which is the flooring in this room, then you can think of ways to cover it up in a manner which you can take with you and which can easily be taken apart. So this rug for me makes that timber floor that I'm not a huge fan of, and I didn't want to invest in restaining, makes it sort of sit in the background a little bit. A big theme in my home is using reclaimed pieces, vintage pieces, pieces from our projects that were in excess or didn't quite work in a project. So it's sort of a collection of, unloved objects, you could say, or long-loved objects. So I'll talk you through some of the stuff in this room. So we have 2 vintage armchairs that have been reupholstered. These are of Italian origin. And then there's this lovely chain lamp that's a French vintage piece. We then had this high gloss lacquer table made bespoke. So that's one of the new pieces. And again, it ties the room together. I think what's interesting in this room and throughout the house is the mix of vintage and contemporary. I'm not particularly hung up on sticking to an era. I think it's important to buy things you love and not care particularly about which period they're from. I don't think you have to match eras at all. I think you can be super playful, mix things up. And to that point, this is a vintage coffee table. I love lucite as a material. I love mixing materials, and I love the lucite coffee table sitting on top of this rug. So you're not hiding the rug, you're letting the person in the room actually see beyond the table to the rug. And I actually don't even know when it's from. I'd guess it's from the 80s or the 90s with the way it's designed and the use of lucite and marble. We then have this really beautiful, it's an temple painting. It's over 100 years old. It's from India, so again, a nod to my heritage. And then this stoneware little table that can actually be used outdoor, indoor, and that's a very, very special piece. It's by an artist called Johannes Nagel, and it's from Gallery Fumi. And I love how it sort of creates a vignette, and there's several moments in this room where there's sort of this sense of creating a vignette. Tyson bench, which is upholstered in this really lovely sort of micro pattern fabric with a nice border detail. Again, love this sort of, hammered metal finish. It's a bit industrial, but then the forms are sort of reminds me of Giacometti furniture, which I've always loved. We have the Nonunzo Gueca sitting on top of the fireplace. The fireplace came with the house, of course, so working with that. That's a piece that I sourced from a store that sells sort of rock formations and sort of semi-precious pieces. A well-loved candle in the mix. I love ceramics, so that's a piece that I bought from a fair in the English countryside, but the artist is an Australian artist who actually used minerals specific to the continent, and it's got this lovely sort of effervescent quality to it, very sort of ocean-like. That's a Jake Chapman plate. I love that it says world domination. It's a good message. Then a Tracy Emin print, and then that's a British artist with the oil landscape. That's an old piece that I've had for many years. It's sort of traveled with me from home to home. And then here, this is a sofa I bought at auction. I got an amazing deal on it. It actually had too much upholstery, so it actually had more back cushions and side cushions, which I've stripped and sort of made the sofa deeper, and then added these 2 lovely cushions with the fringe detail, and you'll notice that the burgundy picks up on the burgundy stripes in the rug. 2 lovely paper mache Porta Romana lamps. These are intentionally sort of oversized. I think they sort of lift the room. But what's interesting is that the top of the lampshade sits just below these cafe-style curtains that I've added. And I think these curtains are, I'm very into cafe style curtains. I think they're very chic. They're a really great way of creating a sense of privacy. This side of the house faces the street, but you're still letting the light come in. You can still see the sky. They create a sort of intimacy without closing the room off. I absolutely adore this tiger. So this is another piece from India, another antique piece. I don't know the story behind why these pieces were created, but it's again that sort of metal, use of metal, sort of Giacometti-esque. It's antique, but there's something very contemporary about it. Even though it's antique, the shape and the face and the way the sort of body of it is elongated. So that's probably one of my favorite pieces. There's lots in here that's been collected on our travels. So that's a vase that we bought when we traveled to Singapore. The artist explained to us that it's a very Singaporean glaze. It's called a miso. I hope I'm saying it correct. Shiro miso glaze, but it's a local glaze that produces this very beautiful color tone, and I love this sort of caramelly color to it. Those are two birds given to me from my best friend in Iran, and they're apparently good luck, a pair of birds, and I just again love the geometry and shape. That's a book that Elysian is in, so it's there for a reason, so I can flip it open and show off when I want to. And then you'll notice in the house I have several of these bronze human forms. I've always been interested in, the human body, the scale of it. These are particularly dear to me. They're by a sculptor and a ceramicist called Diana Payton, who was one of my best friends. And she made these in the later stages of her life when she found throwing pots difficult, so she still wanted to continue creating, but she didn't want to make ceramics anymore, so she moved to doing cast bronze. And I just love, their scale. They're there to pick up and touch. You can feel, I love them because they sort of remind me of her hands. You can almost feel the artist having sculpted them and put them together, so they're very special to me. On the lacquer table is a little silver pumpkin. That's from a trip to Cambodia. And that's one of Diana Payton's ceramic pieces, actually, before she stopped making them. I've always loved this fabric from a shoemaker with the dragon. So I love those two playful cushions, and they have a bit of the Orient about them. I lived in Singapore and the Far East for some of my life, so I like that sort of reference. This plinth, which my husband says makes our house feel like a museum, which I don't see what the problem is with that. So that's a monologue marble plinth. I like how this sort of purpley tones again pick up that burgundy thread across the room. And then that's a piece by Willer Gallery. And I love this sort of reference to nature, and I love the sort of materiality of it. This piece I found it in a store in Cotswolds in Tetbury, and it's of an era where English artists were making maquettes out of balsa wood of Moorish architecture. And it's a maquette of the Alhambra, and all of this is actually timber marquetry, and then it's in its original frame, which is a blue velvet frame. And actually, when I was going to buy it, and I said to the dealer that I was going to remove this frame and put a new frame on, he sort of pulled it back from me, and he said, if you're going to do that, I'm not going to sell it to you because it needs to live in its original frame. So I promised him. So if he's watching, I kept my promise. So actually, it's quite interesting that I sort of framed the frame within another frame, and I'm so glad I did. It sort of is housed, retaining its original form. These two chairs, I love, woven surfaces. So I love these. They remind me of it's an Indian technique which creates these outdoor beds almost called charpais, which I grew up, having them outdoors in our home. So it reminds me of the charpais of India. But then I love this sort of asymmetrical top to them. These are two chairs. So just got the pair from Heaps and Woods. And then this is a cyanotype by an artist called Dan Payton. I love it. It's maybe a little bit morbid. Feels a bit like a Victorian bride who's jumped in the water. But I love, again, its sort of ephemeral quality, and I love that it's made with cyanide. It's an interesting technique. I've always liked cyanotypes, and I like its scale. So the light is very exciting because it's a bargain, and who doesn't love a bargain? So I was trawling through auction sites and I found it from an auction house in Brighton, and it's a Maison Lunel light, which is a French maker, and they sell for gazillions of thousands of pounds if you buy them from a vintage dealer or a sort of recognized online dealer. So it's come with its certification, and I feel like I got a real deal. I've learned a lot about buying vintage pieces actually through this process, particularly if you're buying stuff online. It arrived damaged because of its transport, so I had to find a welder and an electrician who were happy to come on the same day and weld and rethread the wire, but I got there in the end, and it's not put me off. If anything, I remain committed to using vintage pieces. I think it's so wonderful to not add more stuff to the world unless it's something meaningful. That's it. I think that's everything in the room, and the idea is that the room feels characterful, playful. It has lots of stories. It's, you know, our family's sort of travels and life coming together, and there's a mix of different time periods. They're crafted pieces, they're artist-made pieces in there, and then there's lots of collected objets in the mix as well. How do we use this room? So this is our final stop in our hosting usually. So it's when we want to leave all the mess behind as we've made it across the other rooms in this house. So usually we end up in this room around 3 o'clock in the afternoon after lunch. Often serve pudding in here, having left the dining table behind, and typically then sit here for the rest of the evening. Usually either me or my husband will slip away and tidy up some part of the dining room, and then maybe if friends are going to stay even longer, we might move back there later in the afternoon. But most of our we tend to host mostly during the day. It tends to end here at about 6, 7 o'clock when we're sort of having maybe some nibbles and a glass of wine. We don't tend to start entertaining in this room. This tends to be the sort of last stop in the hanging out. Well, now we're going to head to the dining room and the sunroom, which are really one room, but I feel it sounds grander when you describe them as 2 rooms. So we're going to go into the one room that I've split into 2 rooms in my head. So we're now in the dining room, and this room has incredible scale, which was very exciting. It was one of the rooms I sort of spotted out of the corner of my eye when I came to visit the house, and drew me to seeing the rest of the house. While I've left the walls of this room white as they were originally, but with a fresh lick of paint, I did want to bring a strong color theme to the room, and I was gifted this beautiful rug by edition 169. I absolutely love the different textures, and this particular shade of this sort of indigo blue is a go-to color for me in my interiors. Again, it has the different weaves in the rug, and it sat perfectly in the space and became the jump-off point for the color theme of the room. And so then the dining table is sort of matching it. Very intentional because it's such a large dining table, and I don't particularly love its shape actually. And so I wanted the color to sort of make it have personality, but a little bit disappear into the rug and become sort of one object. So it works really well and ties the space together, gives it a sort of character despite not having painted the walls or wallpapered them. With it being a rental, I didn't want to invest in wallpapering the walls. We have these dining chairs, which actually I had from before. They're from Ben Whistler, but I had them re-lacquered in the gloss lacquer, whereas earlier I had them in the matte, and I actually really love them in this sort of piano gloss, which picks up the light, and had them reupholstered in this lovely boucle. And then I've laid out a few of my pieces that I particularly like. So that's a lovely marble plinth from Villa Gallery, and some of my ceramic pieces from Villa Gallery. And then I have my cutlery from Curated that I've had for years and years and still love using. I think it's called the Goa range. Again, weird Indian connection without it being intentional. And then that's a beautiful candle stand by Fumi Gallery by Håkan Holtz, the artist whose piece is also in my study, which you'll see later, so really playful. Some of my art, so over the years we've collected lots of art. That's an Indian artist called M.F. Hussain. And then these two wall lights that I really love. I love the texture. I love the sort of combination of how industrial and delicate they feel. They are by an Indian maker called Shailesh Rajput. I discovered his work on a trip to India. I went to speak at a design talk and went to a design fair and saw these two and thought, I have to have these pieces. So these are new, but they're two pieces of craft. Absolutely love having them. So there were different lights here on the wall that were this sort of mock rococo shape, and so I've had those removed. They're upstairs in the storage, so I can put them back if and when I leave. The bases for these console tables, they were actually part of a dining table. So they were the two legs to a glass-topped dining table. I really don't like glass-topped dining tables personally. Don't like sort of being able to look down and see everyone's legs. So I asked the dealer if we could buy just the bases, and he was happy with that. So we bought these two lucite bases. And you'll remember just before this, in the yellow room, I have the lucite coffee table. I really like, particularly in a slightly larger home such as this one, I really like mixing materials, but I also like when there are material references that continue throughout the home. So the fact that there's lucite in the yellow room and then you repeat that material in another room, I find it forms a sort of narrative and a story across the property and links spaces together, which I think is really important in a larger home. But then we had the stone base and top added, so I bought just the legs. These are from offcuts, so I've tried throughout the project to be mindful of using offcuts and being as sustainable as we can. So these are offcut pieces, and you'll remember the burgundy in the yellow room. This picks up on that hint of color, so they make for a really fun pair. So this is quite symmetrical as a space. That's a vintage French mirror that I bought from a French dealer. A little bit of personal touch. It's a really nice photo of me and my mum from around the age my daughter is now, so I particularly like it at this point. And then a few other collected pieces. That's a antique temple lamp that I really like. I like its form. And then we're moving into what I like to call the sunroom, although it's the same room, but I like the description. So here I had a older sofa that we had reupholstered. So the mixing of upholstery on a piece of furniture makes it fun. You can probably tell by now I have a real penchant for boucle. So I have my boucle seat cushion, but then have had the rest of the body of the sofa upholstered, again picking up on that sort of burgundy tone, mixing it with the blue that you can see both in the dining table and in the rug. And then a fun mix of cushions. So back to how cushions can be quite playful. So this is in a sort of tapestry-like fabric, and it makes a really nice reference to the large garden outside, picks up on that sort of foliage and that theme. I really love jellyfish, so I absolutely love this print that sits above the sofa. It sort of frames the space. That's a vintage Italian marble table from the 1950s. I love this interesting geometry to the base, and I love the open grain of the travertine. It does mean it's more susceptible to staining, but if you can live with the staining and call it patina in your head, then it's fine. So we have this table, which is quite fun. I like how slimline it is. So we often throw these doors open, whether we're home by ourselves or entertaining. And I didn't want a table that was too large and occupied the space too much and came in the way of sort of moving through the room. Again, two vintage armchairs, which are incredibly comfortable. They're actually the most comfortable chairs in the house, with fun throw pillows on them, a lovely ceramic piece from Willer Gallery, and then bringing a bit of that inside, the outside in. We've got this beautiful red acer that lives in the sunroom and seems to be thriving in this space. We're not very good with our plants. We tend to sort of kill them off quite quickly, but this acer is very resilient. We bought it at the Chelsea Flower Show many years ago when we lived in Chelsea. So it's sort of lived with us for many years through different changes in our life. So it's very nice that it's still here. And this room, you know, it's been in the last 14 months that we've lived here. It's really been the room where we've brought friends together. We hosted Christmas here, we hosted Diwali here, we've had our kids' birthdays in this room. It's a room where our friends and family come together. It's got this beautiful scale. I intentionally left it in the paint color that it was, had a fresh lick of white paint, but I felt this room suited this very clear, sort of warm white paint because we were going to bring in fun pieces of furniture. And I quite enjoy the high contrast between the white walls and the strong artwork and the strong, deep colored furniture pieces. And this spot is particularly incredible on a sunny day. You sort of hear the birds from outside. You're sort of sitting somewhere between inside and outside. And it's really quite magical. You know, we're very much in London, but you feel like you've sort of stepped away a little bit. It's really a really, really nice spot in the house. Yes, so for me, this house is about my family. I have 2 young kids. I have a 9-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter. We have full-time help, you know, so it's about the house functioning, but we love entertaining. So sort of next weekend is our no entertaining weekend. So we're going to get some rest. But most weekends, you know, it's not unusual for us to have friends around on Saturdays and Sundays. I love hosting. I love laying a nice table out. I love, you know, we did an Easter egg hunt over Easter weekend. Really love bringing friends together and actually get told all the time how much they love hanging out in this house. So what I like about this house is I have discovered this about myself, that I actually don't love open plan living for me at this point in my life with young children. I like having spaces that they can retreat to or I can retreat to. And so this house has a lovely mix of some amount of open plan space in the kitchen, but a sequence of spaces that you can move through. So we'll often have friends or family arrive at 12 and leave at 8 or 9 in the evening. And what this house allows you to do is sit in different parts of it through the course of the day and through the course of the entertaining, and like my husband says, leave the mess behind. And you can just leave mess in one space, move to the next space, leave mess there, move to the third space. And it makes for a very enjoyable and relaxed sort of entertaining because you're not worrying and looking at the mess. The other aspect of this house that it needed to fulfill was both my husband and I spent some amount of time working from home. I love going into the studio. It's not far from us here in Kensington. It's literally across the river. But I do like, you know, having some amount of time working from home. And so what this house allows is the topmost floor is sort of the grown-up floor. We have a little workout space there with our Peloton bike, and I do my Pilates there. And then we both have a home office, and it allowed that sort of sequence of living and entertaining on the ground floor, bedrooms on the first floor, and then this sort of grown-up space on the top floor. And that's an important part of, you know, what supports how we live and use the house. So from the sunroom, dining room, let's now head into the children's playroom or our family hangout room in most cases. And I'm going to show you some of the fun stuff we've done for the kids. So we're now in the playroom. It's at the end of the corridor on the ground floor, so it's quite separate from the other sort of more grown-up rooms, which worked well. So it's a really cozy space. And we actually asked the landlords to put a new carpet down, a fitted carpet. There was one here, but it was quite stained. So again, the sort of easy changes you can make when you come into a rental. If they hadn't done it, we would have probably, you know, done it ourselves. So put down a fresh carpet with a very short pile. So it's not a fluffy carpet, which makes it more durable and easy to look after. It's quite a low ceiling space compared to the rest of the house. So the rest of the house, sort of the ceilings are over 3 meters high. This is sort of 2.6 meters, which feels smaller. So I didn't want to put too much in this room, but it needed to be functional for toys. This we use occasionally as a changing table for my 2-year-old, so it's sort of multi-use. And this room is full of sort of more high street stuff. The sofa we bought on auction, and then that became sort of the color determinant, this sort of sagey green. But then we've done a really fun single long pillow with these fun red tassels, and that means that when the kids want to plonk on the sofa, it's not multiple cushions, it's just the one cushion that they need to remove to occupy the sofa. These are from IKEA. And they're this really fun brick red, and I think it's perfectly okay to buy some sort of high street stuff. I tend to avoid it and buy more vintage, but for the kids' playroom, I didn't want to buy anything that was vintage that I wasn't absolutely sure had been newly put together and really sturdy and stable. I've had them strapped back to the wall, so if the kids want to hang off them, you're not worried. This is from Peter Jones, and again ties into the sage green of the sofa. And then I have a really fun rug that I bought online. I found this lamp on Instagram from a Spanish supplier. And then there's lots of sort of fun art in here that's about the kids. So that's my two kids' footprints. That's a self-portrait that my son drew. That's a piece of art that he drew a few years ago that I thought was amazing for a 5 or 6 year old, which he was then. Playroom's really quite functional. It's full of their books and my son's Lego and sort of playing blocks for my daughter. But there's lots of storage in here. So we have drawers with arts and crafts stuff in there. And then this has, we've got a drawer full of puzzles. We've got a drawer full of changing stuff for my daughter. And then another piece that I particularly love is this sweet, sweet little chair that matches my heaps and wood chairs. And I actually found this at a market in Ibiza. We go to Ibiza every summer. It's our happy place. And there was a lady there with a stall who weaves these herself. And she actually had just finished this the day before. And I put this in my suitcase from Ibiza and brought it back. So it's a little bit sort of like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. My daughter has a little matching chair to match our bigger chairs. But I really love this piece, and I love that I met the lady who made it, and I have her card. And again, it's exactly the sort of furniture I like to buy, where you're meeting the maker, there's a story, and you're supporting someone who maybe doesn't have otherwise a forum to sell, their product at large scale. Another little hack, especially for a rental, but more generally, is wireless lamps. They're so great. You can charge them, you can place them in rooms whether you don't have enough ceiling lighting, or you don't want to add a chandelier, or you don't want to add downlights. But also, this room's actually quite bright when the downlights come on, but I love little sort of wireless lamps for creating a bit of atmosphere. It's sort of low-level lighting. You can place them in different parts of the room, and it can change how the room feels or how you're using the room. They're a great little hack for a rental or in general for a home. I think they're something that add a bit of fun to a space. So that's the room. It's we enjoy using it. Actually, this came with the room, with the property, but I love that it has these shutters, so you can open up the top and still have privacy while the kids are playing in the room. And it just works really well. We actually hang out here quite a lot as a family. It's our sort of day-to-day hangout space. I intentionally didn't do a coffee table. I actually thought about it. I even chose an upholstered ottoman for the middle, but I'm glad I haven't done that because it's a sort of empty space where the kids can play. So look, low on the quantum of furniture, high on storage, really relaxed. Nothing in here is uber precious, so the kids can really enjoy it. And we use it a lot, actually, both privately and when we entertain. All the kids sort of come and hang out in here. I wanted it to be colorful. Throughout my home, you'll see I'm not scared of color, but I intentionally didn't make it sort of primary color tone. And then when we bought this sofa in this sort of dull green, I knew that was going to define the room a bit. And then once I spotted these on IKEA in this brick red, it sort of set the tone. And then I've probably played into the more grown-up colors a bit more than making it more kiddie. So you're right. Look, because my son's 9, so he's, not super kiddie anymore. But my daughter's 2, so with that large age gap, I wanted to create a room that sort of gave them both a space that felt right for them. So you're right that it's not super kiddie, but it's not too grown. I was sort of finding that blend. And then we spend a lot of time in here too. So didn't want it to be overtly kiddie. But it's meant to sort of bridge that. It's a sort of family room, children's playroom combined together. It was interesting. I guess something that, you should know, maybe the house isn't in great condition because the estate agent photos were from 8 years before it was put on the market. They were already not hugely attractive, but you could see that the bones were incredible. I put in the offer and then sent my husband to see it, and he came to see it a few days later and came back and said, if you're sure, then okay, yeah, let's go for it. He's like, I'm not sure I can see what you're seeing, but okay, I'm going to believe in you and we can go for it. It's interesting when you are renting a property, right? It's not your long-term home. So you want to limit how much you want to invest in it, both in terms of time and money and effort. You also have restrictions from your landlord about how much they want you to do to it. So what I wanted to do was stretch that framework as much as I could to make a rental feel special and characterful. So I think the first thing I wanted to do was make the home have a strong character, have strong personality, which earlier it didn't. Everything was sort of beige, gray, it felt like a rental. And I wanted it to not feel like that, not feel generic. And I wanted to celebrate the incredible volumes of some of the key rooms and lend it color, personality, fun, and bring our sort of family's life stories to it and make it feel, sort of luxe, a little bit eccentric, collected, and a little bit like we've lived here for longer than we have. And give it that sort of depth of it being a family home, almost sort of no one would know it's a rental. Staying with the children's theme, we're going to head upstairs and I'm going to show you my 2 children's bedrooms, my 9-year-old son's bedroom and my 2-year-old daughter's bedroom. So we are now on the first floor in my son's bedroom. My son's 9, and I wanted to create a sort of kids room, but not overtly kiddie room for him. And so I started with a couple of pieces that sort of then led into the scheme for the room. So I had bought these vintage chinoiserie, sort of celadon painted bedside tables back when I lived in Notting Hill many moons ago. I bought them at the Lots Road auction house, and I bought them because they were so narrow and they fitted my teeny bedroom in my teeny flat. But I suddenly thought, actually, I can take them out of storage and they're going to work perfectly. When you're a renter like me, you often have stuff in storage because you never know where you're going to move to next and what pieces of furniture you're going to need to use. I found this headboard on Vinterior. So it's a second-hand headboard, but it was like new. And I think it's fun. I love stripes. I love checks. You'll see in my daughter's bedroom, and I love stripes. But I love that it's not a sort of symmetrical stripe of just 2 colors. You've got a mix of colors, which means then the room can pick up on different color tones. So then I bought these yellow lamps as a job lot of 3 on an auction. So you'll see I have 1 sitting upstairs in my study when we move on to that after looking at the children's rooms, but I used 2 of them in my son's room. I then bought a bed that I had upholstered. So I bought it from a bed company that offers a range of upholstery fabrics. And it's very practical. It has storage built into the base, which I like doing, especially with the kids' rooms, because then you can have their linens and their towels underneath. I have this beautiful knitted throw, which is from my aunt. My aunt is an incredible knitter, if that's a word, and she knitted this beautiful throw bedspread. And so anything sentimental goes straight into my house until it's, used down to the bone. That's a monkey that was handmade in India, and my friend had it made for my son when he was born. So that's quite a special piece. And then a really fun graphic pattern. Again, remember I talked about the single cushion. I think it's so easy then when you have the 1 cushion, my son can chuck it off the bed at the end of the day. A vintage chair that we found. It's a Scandinavian piece, and I love the yellow tone of the timber. I think it's nice and warm for his room. What I did in this room is the fitted carpet was a bit damaged from the previous tenants. So I used a rug from my previous home and put the rug on top of the carpet. I don't think that looks bad. I think that's totally cool to do, to place a area rug on top of a fitted carpet if you need sort of to create a second layer on it. I have this beautiful plant stand, which is from Oakley Moor. I love the blue shade to it. It's this sort of tealy blue, and again brings a little bit of the garden inside. I love its shape and form. Really sort of ties the room and the tones in the room together. So that's a piece that I particularly like. And then this really fun table that we found online. And this is actually an outdoor light. Again, you'll remember I talked about wireless lamps. And I love this because it has different light settings. So my son at night can have it on at the lowest setting. I sometimes come into the room and he's sleeping, holding the light. He calls it the ice cream scoop. I think that's what it's actually called. But, you can charge them up, and then you have these remote lights, and you're not worried about the kids playing with them or using, because they're waterproof, really sturdy. They can't really hurt themselves with it. So that's a nice little fun addition. And then, it's his room. So it's got his electric guitar. It's got his electric drum kit, and it's very much his space to hang out in. It sort of worked. I changed the ceiling light. There was a ceiling light in this room that I didn't like. So found a fun ceiling light and added that to the space. So lots of little additions. I've kept the stuff I've removed so that if and when we do move out, I can take these with me if I want and put back the original fabric of the house and leave it, as I got it from the landlords. But I have worked with the blinds that were in the room already. So lots of sort of working with what's in the space and sort of enhancing it and giving it personality and making it fun for my son, and a sort of room that he really enjoys spending time in. So we're now in my daughter's room. Here, again, this room was painted as sort of grayish white, and I really wanted to give it a sort of pink, not baby pink color. So I absolutely love this shade of pink. It is a color called Amchur by Graphene Stone, which is actually an Indian, is it spice? It's like crushed mango that you add to food for a flavor. So very strange. All my paint colors in my house have ended up with an Indian theme. So, something going on there psychologically. Left the original fitted carpet, but then made quite a lot of change in this room. But again, from a rental perspective, everything that can be taken away and the room can be turned back to its original, pre-rental state. So I removed the light. That was a sort of very generic, sort of office-y looking light. And there's this beautiful Burt Frank light that I love. It's got this softness to it, but it's quite slimline. It doesn't take up too much of the room. Again, put a rug on top of the fitted carpet. So you can see a theme here with some of the things I've done. That's a really fun rug by Lorena Canals. I love how it's got this sort of sea, underwater kind of feel. I love all the textures, which my daughter loves, being two, she's very tactile. And then created a little corner in the room with an armchair. Another thing that, is fun to do in a home is have bespoke cushions made. It's a way of bringing in texture, pattern, but it's not a big commitment. You can change your cushions around. I sometimes move cushions between rooms, but it's a fun thing to do. These curtains, which I initially thought, gosh, they're quite strong, they came with the property, and I've come to love them because actually found that I had this wonderful piece of art by an Indian artist called Raza that sort of tied in the Amchur pink with the checks on the curtains, and they actually bring this sort of country feel to the room. I love the addition of this sculpture from Heaps and Woods. It just gives a bit of a sort of corner to the room. It gives a sense of scale to the room. My daughter loves it. It's utterly playful. It's light. She sort of can push it around, and it's very tactile, has a beautiful shape to it. And then have this little wooden side table by Bias, and this fun giraffe lamp from Jonathan Adler. And then I had a lampshade made in this sort of rose pink that is a stronger version of the Amchur paint on the wall. We bought these beautiful ceramic fish on a trip to Sri Lanka. It was the trip where we decided we were ready to have a second baby. So it felt very fitting that when she finally arrived, that they go in her room, and she loves them. She often looks up at them when we're sitting in the armchair at the end of the evening. You know, I bought that little stool that she loves sitting on Etsy. So, you know, you can find fun finds online by makers. Everything's not hyper designed in the space. The drawer unit is from IKEA. I brought it from my last home. So there's a real mix in here. I love this basket that I bought. It's from Ibiza, again, where we go every summer. So lots of happy memories. And I found it in a shop. It's with recycled plastic, a really fun piece. So there's different materials and textures in here. There's a bit of reference to heritage and a bit of reference to sort of her being a girl. And so, you know, there's lots of stuff in here. This is a really fun blanket that she loves. It's by an Indian brand called Good Earth. And I love how it has these sort of elephants on it. A few changes that I made that were maybe, you know, more about changing the fabric of the house or the fitted elements. I didn't love the door handles that were on here. So I bought these from a second-hand shop. They've got a really nice texture. So I just swapped out the handles that were on the doors originally. And then I found this lovely tassel. It's from a South American maker. Added the tassel to the door. So little sort of ways of personalizing the space. The last addition to the room is the footstool. That's by Nicola Harding. It comes in this colorway. It worked perfectly with this room. And it's really nice to have a sort of footstool in the room. We sometimes use it as its own piece of furniture, sometimes to keep our feet up when we're sitting on the armchair. But this room just has this lovely feel to it. It's quite spacious, as with a lot of my other rooms. I haven't put lots of furniture in. Because it's a rental, I don't know how long we might be here for, but also because I like leaving lots of open space for flow, lots of open space to collect stuff over time, add pieces of furniture as you learn how you want to use a house or a room. So I don't feel you have to sort of fill everything out on day one. You can acquire, add, remove, move things between rooms as you use the home and learn sort of how you and the home fit together. But I would say this is another favorite room in the house. I really enjoy being in here. It's just got, it's got a really sweet, calming vibe. I decided I wanted to be an architect when I was 11. My parents were building a large family estate, almost multiple houses in India. And stayed committed to that plan, studied architecture for 7 years at the Architectural Association, started practicing architecture in 2004. And by 2010, I had come to the realization that architecture at the scale at which I was practicing it, large scale, you know, big master plans, large sort of tall buildings, large developments, wasn't for me. In London particularly, you know, between planning restrictions and cones of vision that have to be protected and rights of light and wind studies and all the stakeholders and flying freeholds and all these sort of requirements and restrictions, I found practicing architecture felt quite restrictive. I'm not saying it's like that for everyone, but for me it felt like that. It felt very slow moving. So in 2010, I went to work for a different studio called Candy and Candy. They were developers. They were operating at the very, very top end of the market. And so in my 3 years at Candy and Candy, I learned interior design on the job. I had become more and more interested in the lead up to 2010 in the decorative and in the inside of buildings rather than the outside of buildings. Late 2008, 2009 is when this sort of mental journey began. But between 2010 and 2013 is when I learned how wonderful this kind of confluence of an architectural mind and an interior design learning could be. And so that really started the second stage of my career. And then in 2014, 11 years ago, I founded Elysian. And what excited me about founding the studio was how interior design, architecture, project management, it could all come together in this wonderful wrapper of a service for clients where we looked after every step in the process and sort of held their hand through the journey. So now that we've done the children's rooms on the first floor, let's head upstairs to the grown-ups floor, and I'm going to take you to see my study. So we're now in my study or my home office. I probably work from here a day a week, maybe more than that. So I use this space a lot. It's my sort of little sanctuary. It's on the top floor of the house. It's on the grown-ups floor, which the kids don't tend to come to because there's no need for them to do so. So with this room was again in a sort of white paint when we took on the rental. And I decided to give it a strong personality. So it's painted in graphene stones, Indian terracotta. And what's really nice about this color is it's a sort of color, non-color. It lets you place other colors against it quite easily. It's not too pink, it's not too red, it's not too orange. So really sort of hits the spot for me. And for me, the biggest sort of most exciting moment in this room was when I realized I could actually set up a study table that faced into the room. And there's something very sort of spacious about that. Really feels expansive to not sit looking onto a wall, looking onto a window with your back to the room, but to sit looking into the space. I get this wonderful view out into my garden where I'm very lucky to have a magnolia tree that's been in blossom actually for the last few weeks. And I love the way this room's come together in its seating arrangement. There are two pieces of reused furniture here, and they're a testament to how much we scaled up from our apartment in Chelsea. So this table is a high street purchase from West Elm. It's utterly used and marked, but this used to be our dining table in our flat in Chelsea. And it's quite astounding that our dining table from Chelsea is small enough, or this house is big enough that it can be now my desk. And I love that I reuse it. It's still got the corner, safeties from when my kids would knock their heads into the corner of the table. And I don't mind that. I think it's okay to have pieces that are, a little bit rough around the edges. But then this room has some really fun sort of artistic pieces, gallery pieces. So this is a really beautiful piece by Jochen Holz from Gallery Fumi. I have this piece of art that I love and works so beautifully with the color in this room. It's a Korean artist that I picked up this canvas from at the Collect Art Fair in Somerset House that I love going to. Those are two Turkish ceramic vases. I have two really small silver Hindu objects on top of this fireplace. The fireplace is original. And then this really fun chair. I've sort of chosen not to have a desk chair or an office chair, but often bring different chairs from the house up to sit on, depending on how I'm feeling. So this is a chair from pure white lines. I love the fact that the back is quite interesting. I often work either on my iPad or my laptop, so it means I can have a very sort of free desk. Ceramics that I love, so always have some ceramics on my desk. Picked up a fun, I hate how tissue paper boxes look, so I always buy covers for them. And that's actually from a maker that I found online. And I love marbled paper, so it speaks to that. That's a really lovely ceramic piece from Willer Gallery. It's really nice to have a plant on my desk. It just gives it a bit of texture and a bit of depth. That's a really interesting, it's actually a musical instrument, an indigenous musical instrument from India that was gifted to me by my mom. And then my love of ceramics across these little pots. And I keep changing the books that sit on my table. So I have a bigger bookshelf in another room and I swap the books out. I have different books at different times. I love this sofa, which used to be our living room sofa at our old flat. And What had happened in time was that the seat cushions had got frayed and the fabric was out of production, and we had leftover fabric, two different leftover fabrics from two different projects. And I thought, you know what? And neither was enough to reupholster the sofa. So I kept the base in the original, which is 10 years old, had the seat cushions upholstered in this lovely sort of caramel yellow mohair, and then the leftover boucle to do the back cushions. And it was a little bit of a risk, but I think it's really fun to have three different upholsteries. And then I am really into animal print, which my husband's not so convinced about. So since it's my study and he doesn't hang out here much, I have an array of animal print graphic cushions. And again, it's really fun to bring in colors. So, you wouldn't expect to see turquoise in the space, but I really love bringing in pops of sort of mismatched colors into a space. And the really nice thing about having a sofa in my study is if I'm not doing sort of computer-based work and I need to sit and read or need to have a call, I find myself moving from my desk, sitting on the sofa, curling up my feet. I've got a basket there with a throw. I'll even, cuddle up under the throw, do my calls, or if I need to make notes or mark up a presentation. And it just means that this room feels to me like more than a workroom. It's sort of my space to hang out, my space to even relax, think, read. I use it a lot. I have these sort of landscape pieces on the wall. These were inherited from a dear friend, the ceramicist and the sculptor that I mentioned. So these are from her collection that I inherited when she passed. And so this wall is sort of pays homage to her. And then I have a little wall that you may or may not want to show, which is dedicated to myself. So it has my certificates. It has a couple of pieces of press articles that were particular moments in my career that were really exciting. And because this is a private space, it feels okay. I wouldn't put them in my living room, but it feels okay to have them up on this wall. They're a sort of reminder of some of the exciting milestones in my career, some of the achievements that have meant something to me. I almost always have fresh flowers in this room. They're often cut flowers from the garden. It's not a formal bouquet, but I love putting together a small floral arrangement at the start of the week. Sort of keeps me happy through the week. And then again, a bunch of objects scattered around, maybe some magazines in which Elysian has been featured. I love this. I'm really very sentimental. This is a pasta necklace that my son made for me when he was 4. He made it in school. He painted pasta with glitter paint and came home very proudly. And I really love it. So that goes everywhere with me. So it's always wherever I work, I always have that. And then these are two bowls from a Greek artist that I bought when I was in Athens a couple of years ago. And that's a really interesting Iranian artist. I went to Iran in 2013. And she does pieces which have this earthenware finish on the outside, but then on the inside, she paints them with different metal finishes. And I bought a collection of bowls. And I'm quite the magpie. I love a bit of shiny gold. So I really love this bowl. And so there's a mix in here of my architectural books, pieces that mean something to me. It's particularly in a London home, if you're on the top floor, you may well be under the eaves of the house. And one of the techniques that I think helps the room feel a bit bigger is if you color drench the walls. So even if you don't take the paint up to the ceiling, but if you paint your eave spaces in the same color as the walls, you kind of cover the room with this paint color. It makes it all feel more cohesive and lends interest. I think there can be an instinct to sort of shy away from these slanted walls, but actually by painting them, I think they make them a bit of a feature, make them part of the overall room, and somehow make the room feel bigger than it did when the walls were white. So it's a nice way of sort of playing into the architectural features of the space, and it's a common feature in London homes, certainly. And I love spending time in this room. It's my sort of favorite, one of my favorite spaces to hang out in the house. So it's not very good for business, but what makes a house a home is the people. And I think living authentically, leaning into who you are. And I think my favorite part of what we do at Elysian is helping people live beautifully. We all need a safe space. We all need somewhere we can retreat to. We all need somewhere where we can celebrate life's moments. And much as I love what I do and I feel it's important, ultimately it's creating the backdrop to a well-lived life. And so if you can create a home that gives you that backdrop to a well-lived life, then your home is successful. Whether it's neat or messy, painted white or painted yellow like this room is, it sort of becomes, that's secondary. It's about giving yourself the backdrop. And for us, this house, Alton House, and what we've done here gives us the backdrop to live life well as we see it.
Thanks for watching. Go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content and shopping guides.